been a while.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the City Council on April 22nd. Roll call, please.
Sure. Councilmember Wilson. Here. Councilmember Levack. Here. Councilmember Derringer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Piper. Here. Mayor Mersch.
Here. All right, Pledge of Allegiance. Pat, would you like to lead us in the pledge tonight?
Of course.
Thank you.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any presentations, proclamations? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. Approve the order of the agenda. I have a suggestion. Anybody else on? Okay, I would like to move I'd like to move all of 13, move all the new business ahead of old business, and the old business is the 12A site logic, so we're going to do new business first, if that's all right with everybody?
And then,
Just reverse the two.
were you going to move the commission items as well after that, or are you going to take the planning commission items first?
Yeah.
Your head, yes.
She
Which-
would like to take the planning commission items first.
Perfect.
Do we have members of the public for the that are any of the applicants for the planning commission items?
That's fine.
How about if we move them ahead of I was just trying to be considerate of any applicants.
John, are any of the applicants in the room at this time?
I'm sorry, you representing? No, from Forster Lane. Forster Lane, yes.
Okay, so we will do the commission, we'll do the commission items first, if that's all right. Unless you want to spend the night with us as well. Okay, all right. Blue folder items, we have some.
Yes, you do. There's 4 items. You have one for item 10A, 10B, 12A, and 14A, all slide presentations to receive and file.
Make a motion to receive file?
Second. All in favor? Aye. So there's nothing we need to be covered on until we get into the slide presentation on these, right? Okay. Next one, all same thing?
Yes, all 4
All-
for each
all
of their
4.
items. That's correct.
All right, very good. Okay, this is the time. Any public comment on non-agenda items? Mr. Eichley? Then Charlie, if you're going to go next then?
Nobody's saying he's going to get left out.
I would have never left you out.
No. Jim Eichley, 14 Crest Road West. My question is about our Republic Service contract, the ones that they are in breach of, that I was wondering, since it's been passed off several months ago, many months ago, to the attorney for to see what they can do about it, because we can't do anything about it. And so it's kind of like going into a deep hole. I just want to know if there is any progress. I'm not asking what he's negotiating with them. But since they are taking our money for services they're not rendering, and I think it's something that we ought to be at least entitled to knowing, at least if they're doing something, if they file a lawsuit against them, or are they just holding hands with them? If you could give me some kind of a brief answer, I'd appreciate it. Where you don't have to, you can just say no comment.
I'll let you finish your public comment, sir, and then, yeah.
That was it.
Mr. Eichley, do you care to say anything?
Madam Mayor, at your pleasure, would you like me to address that comment?
Please.
Perfect. So, of course, the public services agreement is one that is always at the forefront of everyone's mind. It is a dynamic, ongoing issue. The I'm not going to disagree with anything that the gentleman said, but just know that it is multifaceted, and we are constantly trying to work with them to improve that and get them in compliance, albeit it is a back and forth that is ongoing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Rain?
So let me, is 13B, are you going to talk about the sewer line? I understood that the meeting would have something with a background on it and an explanation of how it
Okay,
was characterized by the
yes.
gentleman.
I mean, you-
I just don't know if you're already going to talk about it. Is that all?
What you wanted to talk about, that will be under 13B. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have everything that you want to know, but that would be the place to talk about what you want to talk about. Any other non-agenda items? Okay, thank you very much. Hearing none. The consent calendar. Do I have any, what is wishes of the council on the consent calendar?
I would make a motion, we move the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Okay, so
Seconded by Piper.
get a second from
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem. In favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Boy, that's good. That's the first time we've done that in a long time.
Yep.
So 8, so 9, we have no excluded consent calendar items. Commission items. Okay, I need to recuse myself on item 10A because I live in very close proximity to it. So Mayor Pro Tem will be leading this, and come get me when it's time.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. This is an item that went before the planning commission. It's zoning case number 23-100 for 4 Spur Lane. It's for site plan review and variance. The subject property is located in the city of Rolling Hills, down in the middle part, southern part, south of Crest Road. This shows the close-up of the subject property with a 1,000-foot radius. Residents or owners within that 1,000 feet were notified of the public hearing that went before the planning commission. It shows a vicinity map showing the subject property and the proximity to properties around there. To the east, the building there is 33 feet away. To the north, you have a building across the street from Spur Lane, which is about 169 feet. To the west, you have a building that's about 122 feet from the subject building. And to the south, the building there is about 386 feet. The property is zoned RES1. The net lot area is just over an acre at 1.08 acres. There's an existing 3,525 square foot single-family residence that was built in 1951. The existing residence is about 14 feet from the roadway easement from Spur Lane, 24 feet from the northeastern side property line and 25 feet from the northwestern side property line, and 288 feet from the rear property line, which is downslope, and there's also access off of Centuring. Again, the residence was built in 1951, and in 1962, the Planning Commission approved a variance for an addition to that structure. This shows the subject property and the existing building, which actually encroaches into the front yard setback. And it's situated on the top portion of the property next to Spur Lane. The rest of the property does slope down until you get down to Centuring down at the bottom. The required approvals that were approved by the Planning Commission include a site plan review for demolition of the existing structure, construction of a new 4,870 square foot residence with a 967 square foot garage. The applicant is looking to expand the building pad. It's currently at 7,000 square feet, and they're looking to add about another 6,000 square feet, making the pad 13,000 square feet. The new residence meets the requirements for the reduced setbacks on a small lot. So instead of a 50-foot setback requirement in the front, it's down to 30 feet. The applicant also is proposing a 1,000 square foot swimming pool and about 6,500 square feet of new hardscape. And the project was actually revised. Originally, they came in without 8,900 square feet of hardscape, and so that's been downsized. And they did that in order to limit the amount of grading, or reduce the amount of grading. The revised plan that went to the Planning Commission the second time in March totaled 4,750 cubic yards of grading that was balanced on site, minus the exemption portion for the swimming pool in the basement. Originally, they proposed a project that had 7,600 cubic yards of grading. Planning Commission reviewed the project originally and told the applicant to consider reducing the size or the amount of grading involved. And so that's what the applicant did. Retaining walls are also included with the project. There's a maximum of 5 feet, 2.5 feet, which is on the southern part of the pad. There's also a variance request to exceed the maximum allowed disturbance, which is 40% maximum. The project includes a proposal for 63% roughly of disturbance to the lot. That is down from the original, I'm sorry, that is actually up from the original of 67 previously. Actually, let me just take that back. It's actually down from the previous. I think this is a little. It's down from previous, yeah, 67%, and it's down to 63.49% disturbance. So there's actually less grading than what was proposed earlier. In terms of structural coverages, originally they had proposed a project, and those are all crossed out. They actually came back and revised the project, and the revised project is shown there in the blue. They were able to reduce the structural coverage. It went from 18.56 down to 16.8%. Flat work had been reduced as well. The total lot coverage, the maximum is 35%, and they went down to 30.85%. In terms of total site disturbance, they are requesting a variance for this because the maximum is 40%, and they're going up to 63%, which exceeds the maximum by about 23%. In terms of the building pad coverage, the code has a guideline, which is 30% maximum. But again, that is a guideline. It's not a set requirement. And so the applicant is proposing to go above that at 50-60%, which is not uncommon when you have a lot of projects that actually do exceed that guideline. In terms of the building pad, again, those have been revised. The main difference between what was seen by the Planning Commission in January as compared to what they approved in March is that they got rid of the pad 2, which includes a stable down at the bottom part of the property. So this shows the aerial of the property. It comes off of Spur Lane. Access is proposed off of the northwestern part of the property. The existing access is on the northeastern side of the property. And so they're really looking to remove the existing driveway and put it on the western part, access that part there into the residence. They are looking to expand some of the building pad there for the house. And they're proposing now a set-aside area in this location. Originally, they had proposed a stable in this location that had access off the cinch string. There was some issues with that the Planning Commission had, and so they decided to remove that from the property. And if they decide to come back at a later time, that would have to go before the Planning Commission. But right now, it is a set-aside area, which is accessed off from Spur Lane. This shows the site plan of what's being proposed. Again, the existing driveway is going to be removed. The new driveway will come off of the western part of that property. This is sort of turn around to what north is going to the right. They have a garage here in the front and the rest of the house there. The swimming pool is going to be located in the back behind the house, and they have retaining walls there supporting the building pad. And this shows a comparison of what was proposed back on June 16th when it went to the Planning Commission the first time. The bottom there is the second proposal, which was went before the Planning Commission in March. And so the bottom one is what was proposed, or actually what was approved with modifications to that. But as you can compare the top proposal in January to the bottom, you can see that originally they had proposed this stable in this location with a pad and access off of cinch ring. They've removed that from the bottom portion, so that's no longer there. It's kind of crosshatched here though, but that area there is the set-aside area, and you can see the access going on the western part of the property, connecting to the main driveway onto Spur Lane. They also, because the Planning Commission wanted to see the project with reduced grading, they pushed the building back away from the slope, and they pushed it back. If you see the line right over here, that line is now over here. So it got closer to Spur Lane. But when they did that revision, they also decided to, instead of a 2-car garage, have a 3-car garage. And see, that's why you have that push up there. That's a 3-car garage now instead of the 2-car garage that was proposed back in January. And because they were able to, they wanted to reduce the grading, so what that did is cause the whole pad to increase in height by 18 inches. And, that 18 inches of increase in the pad did reduce the grading. However, it created more view issues. And so when we had the field trip back in March, there was some issues with the neighbor on the north side of Spur Lane with that 18 inches. The Planning Commission eventually did approve the project in this configuration, but 18 inches lower. So it met the elevation that was proposed back in January. It's now pushed a little bit closer over to the street and down 18 inches. It did create one little issue, and I'll get to that a little bit later in regards to this retaining wall in the front, which also has to be lowered 18 inches, increasing the height from 3 feet up to 4.5 feet. There are solutions to that, but again, the Planning Commission did approve this, as you see here, but 18 inches lower to appease the concerns with the neighbor about view blockage. These are a couple of sections of the subject property. The top there is a northern elevation seen from the street. The bottom is on the street. The bottom is on the. It should be the east side, looking towards the building. And the top there is the rear of the property. And the bottom. Yeah, I'm sorry. The top there, they have a trellis in the back there, and I can show the plans here later on, which is actually in this side here. This is another comparison just of the grading. And so the one on the left shows the proposal as it was presented to the Planning Commission in January. The one on the right is a proposal shown to the Planning Commission in March. And as you can see on the left, you have a lot more colors on there. The blue represents the fill, the red represents the cut, and the darker the colors, the more intense the grading is being done. So you can see that they had grading there for the stable that was eliminated. They also reduced a lot of the grading in this portion over here, as you can compare it to the one on the right. And so when the Planning Commission did approve it, they did approve it with less grading there, which they wanted. However, to appease the neighbors across the street, they also wanted to see it lowered 18 inches as it was originally proposed in there. So they're going to have to sort of tweak around the grading in that area, but it is doable, and it was conditioned by the Planning Commission, as shown there, with just 18 inches lower to protect the views of the neighbors. This is just another site of what was proposed previously. And this is another comparison of the section, the top being in January, the bottom being in March. You can see that the building is moved a little bit towards the street to the right. And also the garage has been converted from a 2-car garage. It's been expanded to have a 3rd car in there, which puts it closer to Spur Lane. And then per the Planning Commission condition, they're going to be lowering that by 18 inches, which is also going to increase the height of the retaining wall 18 inches, which brings it from 3 feet to 4.5 feet. They didn't have a variance for that, so they do have an option with that. They could either separate that wall into 2 walls, 2.5 feet and 2 feet, similar to what they have over here. They're showing 2 retaining walls. And so that would bring them down to 3 feet, which is the maximum allowed. They can also reduce that garage back to a 2-car garage, which will meet the requirement. So they do have some options there. Staff will review the plans prior to submittal into the building plan check to make sure that it meets the conditions approved by the Planning Commission. Landscape plan was proposed conceptually, that has been reviewed by our consultant. And in terms of communications, we did have a meeting back in January 16th, which was noticed in the Daily Breeze, as well as the one in March. Notices again were sent to residents within 1,000 feet. And we did have a number of people that participated in those meetings. Some of the concerns that were brought up at our public hearings include the concerns from the owner at 3 Spur Lane, the Housekeys. There were concerns about the higher ridge lines, the gable roof design, the amount of grading being involved, the landscaping and any trees that may block the views, and also the disturbance of the properties. Back when I went to the Planning Commission in March, the Planning Commission discussed some other concerns, including the wall heights, the house being raised 18 inches, the amount of disturbance being done, the movement of the dirt, comparison with the original proposal, some of the fill at the back of the building pad, and the preservations of, the view preservation, and particularly those across the street at the Houseke's residence. The Planning Commission at the March 19th meeting did visit the property at 3 Spur Lane to observe the view at that location. In terms of the environmental review, we find that it is categorically exempt for the, under the California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15303, Class 3. It's construction of a new single-family residence and accessory structures. And our recommendation is that the City Council receive and file the Planning Commission's decision to approve the project.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for John?
I do. John, where does it say that the planning commission only approved a 3-foot retaining wall in the resolution? Because I was looking for it, I know they asked for something in excess of 3 feet, but where is it state that it has to be no higher than 3 feet?
There's a condition on page 225, which is condition U. That's in regards to retaining walls. Retaining walls shall not exceed 5 feet in height at any point along the walls and shall have an average height of 2.5 feet. And those are for walls outside of the setback area. There is an issue when they revised the plans showing the lowered elevation, that it increased the height at the very front, which is actually encroaching to the front yard.
So the retaining wall is in the front yard setback?
Correct.
So there have to be a variance for that, correct?
Correct.
So all I'm saying is that this condition U simply says it can't exceed 5 feet, but that's not what was approved. The 5 feet may be kind of high right at the street level, because that's right at the street, correct? So where does it say that it's no higher than 3, so that they would have to come back and do, as you say, either get some other approval from the planning commission or agree to 2 and 2.5 feet of staggered walls?
Correct. Either that or reduce the garage size down to a 2-car garage.
I mean, where would that be required if the resolution doesn't specifically limit it to 3 feet? How would you get to that?
Before it goes into building plan check, we will review the plans for substantial conformance with what was approved by the planning commission. So we would check the plans to make sure that it's what the planning commission approved, and they're not asking for anything different or anything more than what was approved by the planning commission.
But the only condition is saying it can't be any higher than 5 feet, but you're saying it's really 3 feet. So that's what I'm trying to find out, where that is specified, because I don't see that.
If you look at the title on page 216, what was approved under the variance was to exceed the 40% disturbance for the property located at 4 Spur Lane. And so the only variance request is in regards to the disturbance. There wasn't one for the increase in wall height in the front yard setback. The Planning Commission does have the authority to approve, under a site plan review, a wall that's 5 feet in height with a 2.5 foot average if it's outside the setbacks. But because this new wall is in the front yard setback, it would be subject to a variance, because we do allow walls in the front yard, but at a 3 foot high maximum.
Okay, so there's a separate law that would apply, that's not mentioned here, that would limit it to 3 feet, so that's, and they did not request a variance for that wall.
Right, and that's because the plans were revised after it was approved by the Planning Commission.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions? Anybody else?
I got a question.
Okay.
Does it matter or make a difference that there's an open code enforcement case against this property before we are asked to even file?
Well, it's a different take. I mean, there's 2 different matters there.
I understand
We are,
they're separate, but I mean, does it make any difference as we're about to take action here?
it should not, no.
Correct, and Councilmember Wilson, there's no, whatever you all decide to do in no way impacts any future code enforcement activities by the city. Correct. You-
By receiving and filing, we're not doing something.
Correct,
out of
yet
order
there, no, yeah.
With an open code enforcement.
And my question was regarding the landscape plan. I can't see the actual trees on the plan I set. We want to make sure there's nothing going to grow up and block neighbors' view. So they all nice and low, are there big trees being taken out, hopefully, things like that? Because I can't tell on the exact trees. I want to make sure no one's planting eucalyptus or big trees or anything that's going to block a view.
I can answer that if you want. There's no trees. No trees planted.
Give us 1 second, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We do have some standard conditions in there. They, on page 224 of the staff report, under conditions S and T, there are conditions in there in regards to the landscaping.
All right, that was it.
Okay, we're all good? All right, then I'm going to open it to public comment. Anyone have a public comment? Melissa?
I might have some questions for John. I just wanted to ask if in the slide that shows the previous property, was there any drainage in that slide? I didn't see any.
In the previous,
It was in your,
the previous development?
it was one of the slides that you showed.
Thank you.
Drainage is going to be reviewed by building safety.
Right, but there was nothing on the slide that you showed on the plan that you have for the previous property.
For the existing condition right
Yes.
now.
Yeah, there was nothing on there. Okay, great, thank you. And then in looking at the plans that were included, the site plan that was included in the agenda packet that was available to members today, there is a site plan that does show drainage on it, a drain pipe with also an inlet on the street and a riprap located at the bottom of the property in the easement that is not reflected on your documents. So I just wondered what changed,
Again,
or why the documents don't match.
Well, the grading and drainage is going to be reviewed under, by building and safety at that stage. And so the grading plan checker will check for the drainage to make sure that meets the requirements. Drainage won't change. It's existing currently, and it will drain towards slope, downslope. And any other, further treatment will be reviewed by the grading plan checker.
Okay, but you did notice that, you did state that there is no drainage located on the property as of right now.
Well, there's a drainage pipe down below where the stable was located. I think that was one of
The one
the,
on Cinstring, the one on the northwestern side that's shown on the overall site plan that was included in the agenda packet this evening?
Yeah. And- yeah,
any existing drainage that's there.
right.
Sorry, is that in?
But just ask the question. We're going to answer best we can.
Sorry. So we had submitted a letter, Melissa McNabb, 11 Quail Ridge South. We're very concerned about the drainage on this property and what may change with the addition of this new drainage pipe that doesn't currently exist. So we had asked that, if possible, we be notified or at least told when this drainage plan expected in the future does show up, as well as any other changes that involve the drainage that might be available for public viewing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment? Charlotte?
Charlie Rain, Fort Pinto Road. So my question, I realize that it goes to the county for building safety and the drainage. My question is, does the county have a hydrology report so they know what's existing and what's being added? And do they develop a plan to deal with that?
That gets prepared and sent over to building and safety. Again, the grading plan checker would review that.
Are you aware, is there a hydrology report that talks about how much water is already coming off?
No. Usually not.
Okay, all right. So okay.
Ms. Visco?
Yeah, Alfred Visco, 15 Century Road. Am I the only one concerned about the fact that this project will exceed the 40% maximum disturbed area by quite a bit? In other words, 63.49%. will be disturbed. Why have a 40% maximum disturbed area on the books when you're going to allow a variance of this huge nature? I could see it if it were, a couple percent above the 40%. I could see where that might, fly. I don't think there's any project in this city, and I could be wrong, but no one's answered this question when I brought it up at the commission level. I don't think there's any project in this city that's exceeded the 40% maximum total disturbed area by this amount. And I read the justifications. Basically, the justifications are, well, we have projects like this in the city on other lots. They have swimming pools, they have, all this kind of coverage and lot area and all that stuff. That's not a justification. What you have here is a narrow lot that's very steep, ending up down at the bottom of Centring Road. I can see the potential here for another poppy trail. This is my concern. I know the county's going to review the geology. They're going to go out and sink holes. I know the civil structural, and I've never met a civil structural engineer yet that has said they can't improve the stability of the lot by pouring lots of concrete, building lots of retaining walls, and putting in lots of caissons. As a former chemical engineer, I used to work for Bechtel Power Corporation, who you probably know about Bechtel, is one of the biggest engineering construction firms in the world, and we did major projects. And I can tell you a lot of times where the civil structural engineers were wrong. And we had to go back in and it created a real mess, not the least of which was up in Calabasas, where the civil structural engineers convinced higher powers in Bechtel that they could design a roof, a red tile roof. And when they went out there, all the red tile roofs collapsed because they did it wrong. So I have no confidence in a lot of this here. What I see is a project that is oversized for the lot. That's what I see. That's where you end up with almost 64% maximum disturbance. There has to be a reason why there's a 40% maximum. And there better be a really good reason why you're going to exceed it by this amount. I think what I'm hearing here, the fact that they have retaining walls that aren't yet finalized, I think this should be sent back to the Planning Commission for another look. Get these retaining walls finalized, look at this disturbed area, come up with some justification that there has been this kind of disturbed area in other projects equivalent. If you're over 40% by 1 or 2%, probably okay, but not 63.4 or 9% compared to 40%. This is another poppy trail, and I don't want to be having to park my car on Spur Road and walking down to my house at the bottom of Centring for 2 years while you guys litigate over this. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, what do you guys want to do?
So,
Close the public comment? Thank you.
okay. I'd like to comment on both of the items that our residents commented on, and one is the drainage. And I've asked about this before and asked for this to happen, but it hasn't. But I understand that after the plans are accepted, approved, then it goes to building and safety. But the problem is with the drainage side is it's completely obscured from the public at that point. Nobody gets to see behind the curtain what the county is doing or what they've done. And then, at some point the county approves it and then the work starts. But this is all a very public process up to this point. But for whatever reason, I guess it's the process, but it seems that it needs to be improved. When you get to some of the technical issues, there is no visibility. And it's a concern to me, especially with the last 2 winters we've had, with all the rain, with the accelerated land movement all over the peninsula. And now we're gonna hand it off to the county, and I'm sure they're qualified, I'm sure they're capable, but nobody gets to look over their shoulder and see what's being done on this. So that is a big concern to me. And I did have a concern about the exceedance of the lot disturbance, I think it was. And John, maybe you can help me with this. In all the maximums that were on the page, maximum building, I forget all the different categories, but the only one that wasn't a maximum, you referred to it as a guideline. I don't understand why we have a guideline on one of these criteria and a maximum on everything else. It's come up before, and I just, again, same as the drainage, it's come up before, but it just keeps coming up, and there's no change to it. But could you explain why we have everything else is subject to a maximum, but I think it was the lot disturbance, is that right?
Pad size.
Sorry?
Pad size.
Pad size, yeah, that's not subject to a maximum, but a guidance.
That's a guideline, yeah. And that's what's in our code. Code was adopted, many years ago, and they had that guideline in there. And I guess it would be up to the planning commission or yourself to determine if you want to enforce that guideline or not. From what I've seen so far, the planning commission sees it, we present it to the planning commission though, but they've been approving projects that exceed the guideline.
Well, we exceed the maximums with some regularity. I just don't understand why that's the only one that's not a maximum, but again, like you said, a guideline. So now I understand it's our rules, and we made the rules. Well, our predecessors made the rules, and that's the way it is. Okay, thank you.
So I don't think it's realistic to have a modern house with only a two-car garage, quite honestly. So right now, my question is, if they need to go to the higher retaining wall, do they have to come back to this whole process, or can we approve it now, including the higher retaining wall, the 4'8" that would be required?
Well, we wouldn't let them get into building plan check unless, say, they meet the code requirements, so they would have.
Because to have to make them come back to the whole process because they need to have, instead of 3-foot retaining wall, a 4'8", I don't think that's fair to make them go through the whole process again. And I don't think it's realistic to make someone have a two-car garage either.
So Jim, and I'm not against what you're saying, part of the reason the 5-foot retaining wall exists, just so everyone understands, because I've been on the planning commission before, is how it affects into the neighbors.
Right.
This is into themselves.
Right.
So this is allowing the house to get lower
Right.
for the neighbors, so that the house isn't in the way.
Right.
And the only person going to see the 5-foot or 4.5
Right.
foot or whatever is them.
Right. And
So-
their grade of their house
Yes.
will be lower than the grade of the street, so no one's gonna see it. So I'd like to let
We
them.
can't, I don't think so here's the problem, is we can't change anything on this without taking it under review,
Okay.
which is gonna go slower than them understanding that it's a better project with a 3-car garage and they need to solve it, and if they don't, they're gonna have, because there's a process to come back through and solve it. I think that's all you're gonna have to do. So with that said is, either we take it under advisement.
Nope.
Or we vote.
Okay, fine.
So would you like to make a motion?
I move that we receive and file.
Second.
Okay, then Christian, can we get a roll call?
Sure. Councilmember Wilson,
No.
Councilmember Black,
Yep.
Councilmember Derringer,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Snyder.
Leah?
Yeah,
I think she's asleep.
No, I motioned her. I have eye contact. She's coming.
Okay. Item 10B, zoning case number 23-137, site plan review to construct an addition to an existing residence greater than 999 square feet. Do I have to read the whole thing,
No, you can just reference as stated on the agenda.
et cetera? At 29 Eastfield Drive.
Thank you, Mayor Marsh. This item is for a property at 29 Eastfield Drive. It's for a site plan review and variance request that was approved by the Planning Commission in March. The subject property is located on the east side of the city of Rolling Hills. It's located right there in Star. It is zoned RES1, which is shown there in the green. And it is next to an area that's zoned OZD, a overlay zoning district. Right over there for smaller properties. It's just outside of that area, so it's not within the overlay, but it does abut that overlay district. This is a close-up of the subject property with a 1,000-foot radius. Owners within the 1,000-foot radius were notified of the public hearing of the Planning Commission. another aerial of the subject property. The house pad is located at the very top. It does slope down into a canyon, and there's a trail easement owned by RHJ in that location. Across from that, you have a single-family homes off of Chuckwagon Road. And this shows the proximity from other properties. The property to the north is about 43 feet away. Property to the east, across the street from Eastfield Drive, is about 140 feet away. Property to the south is about 27 feet away. And the property to the west, the structure, is about over 550 feet away for both properties. The subject property, again, is zone RES1. The net lot area is 54,998 square feet, which comes out to 1.26 acres. It's just above the threshold for small lots, which is actually 1.25 acres. So instead of having a 30-foot reduced setback, the front yard setback is kept at 50 feet. And that, as you can see from the aerial, it is, the pad is at the very top of the property next to Eastfield Drive. Building pad is 13,000 square feet. There's an existing 1,899 square foot single-family residence on the property that was built in 1957. It's also attached to a 433 square foot garage, and there's also 52 square foot storage shed on the property. The application is for site plan review. The applicant is looking to add 1,075 square feet to the residence. And there are two variance requests. One is to construct in the front yard setback, and the second is to waive the requirement for a set side area for a barn corral. In terms of the development table, the property does meet the requirements. Again, the property is 1.26 acres. Everything is based off the net lot area. So if you look at the calculations in there, existing, in terms of structural coverage, they're at 5.16. The proposed project adds another 3% of additions to that calculation, and so the total structural coverage comes out to 8.27%, which is well below the 20% maximum. This is just another table. Again, the structural coverage is under the 20% maximum. It's at 8.27%. In terms of the structural and flat work, the total lot coverage is 35% maximum, and they're at 23.4% with the proposed project. Building pad coverage for the only pad on the property, the residential building pad, is at 27%, which is under the 30% guideline. In terms of grading, it will be balanced on site. They'll have 12 cubic yards of cut, 12 cubic yards of fill, for a total of 24 cubic yards, which is actually exempt from a building or from a grading permit because it's under the 50 cubic yard maximum. And the applicant is requesting a waiver from the stable and corral requirements set aside area because the property does have constraints. There is a steep slope on the western part of the property. This shows a site plan. The Eastfield Drive is located on the right. The front yard is in that area there. There's an existing house already built on the property on the existing pad. The rest of the property on the west is a steep slope that goes down to the bottom there at the canyon. And this shows a close-up of the building pad. Eastfield Drive goes into the subject property. There's a 30-foot road easement at the very front. From that edge of the road easement, we measured the front yard setback, and so the front yard setback is from that point back, which is 50 feet. Again, they just met that reduced setback of 30 feet because they're just over that 1.25 threshold. But that front yard setback is located in that area over there. What they're proposing to do is add a little area there in the very front of the property, so it's about 113 square feet. And then the back over here is about a 962 square foot addition. They're also looking to, they have a little addition to the three-car garage. The existing garage, the door is actually located on this side, facing Eastfield Drive. They're looking to relocate that garage door and put it on this side. And so we did have concerns from the neighbor to the south about where the garage door is located and how cars would have to back out towards that property there. There's also some covered porches being proposed. There's one located right over here. And they are also looking to put some covered porch in the very front. This shows a photo of the existing garage. That garage door, again, is facing Eastfield Drive. And they're looking to relocate that, so they're looking to close this garage door off and put the garage door on this side, which faces the property to the south. That landscaping will be gone and used as a driveway. And from what we can tell from the aerials, this portion here has been paved for quite some time, based on aerials that go back about 20 years. This shows the rear of the house looking to the south, and they're looking to put an outdoor covered patio in this location. And the rest of the addition is located on the far end on that side. A couple of the elevations being proposed. The top there is the south elevation facing the neighbor. And again, the garage door is going to be switched from this side here, and it's going to be put there, which faces the neighbor. The one over here is on the back side, the rear elevation. So they're looking to put a covered deck on the left portion, and this portion here is the addition being proposed. The north elevation, there's really no improvements to this part over here. You can see the proposed deck that comes out, and they're also looking to put this covered patio and extend it where the existing garage is located. The bottom there is the front elevation, and that shows the existing garage door is located about this area. They're going to move that over to this side over there and have that addition in the back. And then have that covered patio or covered porch there extend out where the existing garage is located. My understanding is it's going through RHCA review currently, and they do have some issues with some of the architectural styles, so this will change, and it may change around the site plan somewhat, and so we'll be reviewing that for some substantial conformance with what the Planning Commission approved. This shows the floor plans. The plan on the left is the existing floor plan, and the plan on the right is a proposal with the additions. Again, with the garage door will be located in that way, and so they'll have 3-car garage there. The addition will be in the back, and they're also looking to put this covered patio on the outside and extend out that part there, the front portion there. The project was noticed for the Planning Commission meeting on March 19th. It was put in the Daily Breeze, and it was also sent to residents within 1,000 feet of the subject property. We did have concerns, particularly from the neighbor to the south over at 31 Eastfield Drive. Ms. Judith Hanel had concerns regarding the portion of the driveway on her property. After the field trip that we had with the Planning Commission staff and the architect, Mr. Brett Buckman walked to Mrs. Hanel's property to view the project roof line and what is seen from the neighbor's property. And we took these photos here, which this is from Ms. Hanel's property, showing the proposed roof line right over there. There is a hedge separating the properties. And the photo on the left is a close-up of that, and you can see the top of the roof ridge above the hedge.
Bless you.
This is a close-up of that existing driveway that was an issue of concern. It projects out about 2.71 feet into Mrs. Hanel's property. And so she did have concerns about that. The Planning Commission considered that concern. However, it's more of a civil matter between the neighbors. It's already there, as you can, and I can show the aerial here. So it's already there. There is a hedge between the property and some additional landscaping there, but that portion is already existing in there. So it really becomes a issue between the neighbors. It's a civil matter. The Planning Commission looked at the proposed project. The garage really isn't going to change other than having the garage door on this location and put on the south side there, and then the addition is going to be located in that area. In terms of the California Environmental Quality Act, we find that it is exempt under Class 3, Section 15303, for an addition to a single-family residence. And the Planning Commission's action was to approve the project with the condition that the retaining walls be no higher than 3 feet, and that retaining wall is on the back side of the property. Because they are looking to expand there's a retaining wall right over here. They're looking to demolish that existing retaining wall and push that out a little bit further to expand the building pad for the addition. And with that, our recommendation is that the city council receive and file the planning commission's decision to approve the project.
Thank you, John. Any council members have any questions of staff?
I had a question. Why is it not up to us to say that your driveway should be on your property, not on the neighbor's?
For new development, it should be on the property. This is something that's already existing. It's been like that for quite some time. I'd say at least 20 years, based on the aerials. So that part's not changing.
This is a good time to fix it.
It's something that the planning commission can consider, but it's already existing there. They figure it would be best to handle as a civil matter between the neighbors.
And I got no problem with the project, but this seems like a good time to fix the driveway.
Do we normally do something like that as a condition for, I mean, I don't think we did as a condition for approval of the new project.
Well,
I mean,
we can.
a change, we can?
I recall one where we had a driveway that was on a neighbor's, and we had them move it during their, that was for a whole new construction, not an add-on.
Yeah, for new construction?
So can we do it on an addition or just for new construction?
If the, sorry, John, you want to go there? So once again, it would depend on the nature of the permit being applied for, as well as what I'm going to use here is kind of the non-conforming development. So if there is a nexus between what they're applying for and what it is that you're looking to fix, I would say yes, that is in the purview of the city. I would caution you, Madam Mayor, in going down too much of the merits of that, only because it would need to come back if that is the will of the council.
I can tell you, we do have a lot of properties here because we have private properties that, portions of driveways are on neighboring properties all the time.
Constantly, the fences are on the spot,
Yeah.
driveways are on the spot.
You have shared driveways a lot of times.
It's a good time to fix it, though.
When I was on the planning commission, my recollection was that if it wasn't new construction was different than, on existing, if you had something over here and what you were working on was over here, that was my understanding of, if you had to fix this to do what they needed to do, that was okay, but if it was like,
It's similar to the previous one where Pat asked, do we deal with this right now as part of that? And they're separate. Same thing here. Is if they needed that piece to build the house on it, then we can change it. But now it's just a piece of concrete that's near it. I don't know.
I do have a question with regard to that issue. And John, you were there and I did not go to the site, but is this because essentially you're going into the driveway, and instead of going right into the garage as it exists now, you're going along the side and having to make a hard right into one of the 3 spaces, correct? So is there enough of a turn without this portion of driveway that is actually on Ms. Haynell's property to make that turn?
Yeah, that's a good question, because other cities do have a minimum requirement for backup space from a garage door. Usually, I've seen them usually at 25, 26 feet, but it wouldn't be uncommon to have it down to 24 feet. In our city, our code doesn't have a minimum requirement for backup space from the in our code. So they have about 21, 22 feet backup space there, which if you maneuver it right, you'd be able to get a car out.
Okay, so it is a little tight in terms of what other cities require for that space to be able to turn into a garage.
Yeah, it is a little bit tight, but it is possible to get your car in and out.
Okay, so following that, this is the same thing I had a question on. Could you go back to the slide that showed the encroachment? That 21 feet, that, not that one. There you go. No, it was the aerial, where it showed the encroachment into the, yeah, okay, so the 21 feet, did that go to the property line, or did it go to, did that include part of Judith's property?
The property line from here, it's not shown on this map, but it's approximately like in this location here, sort of shaves off that part of the driveway.
So that's what you measured to, the property line, not the additional?
Here you can see it right here.
Correct, yeah, to the, yeah, you see the property line right over there. It's about 21 feet to the property line, 23 feet at the southern or the western tip.
So you mentioned that some cities have minimum backup distance, but I mean, just the radius, the turning radius to get in and out of that garage, whether driving in or backing in, was that considered?
No.
I mean, a car is gonna be, different sizes, of course. My truck is 21 feet. I couldn't even get out of that garage.
They probably don't have that size truck.
Well, I'm not expecting that, but I mean, a 15-foot car, I just would be concerned about the turning radius.
The planning commission was able to visit the site, and they were able to, based on, walking the site and considering that part there that slightly encroaches into Mrs. Hamel's property, figured, yeah, it was enough space to be able to back out of a car. But again, we have no minimum requirement in our code.
Yeah, I thought I saw a comment from her about the headlights shining into her bedroom, but I didn't see I don't remember seeing a comment about the encroachment. Was that, did I miss that, or was that part of it?
We've had discussions with her, and we know that, yeah, she does have concerns with the encroachment that's currently existing.
Okay, thank you.
We aren't getting too far.
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to open public comment on this issue. Fine. Okay, hearing, state your name and address, please.
Hi, Cameron Jahangard, 13 Wide Loop. So my concern was, having a garage door open up to the side easement, we're not really supposed to be building any type of flat work or any type of structure. I think it's a little odd, and correct me if I'm wrong, but can the city really approve a plan that doesn't include the actual lot that the plan is for? This plan is including access and right-of-way and a driveway on a lot that is not even legally theirs, which therefore shouldn't apply to the application. So my question is if I'm encroaching on my neighbor's lot, can I provide a site plan including the land that's technically not mine and is my neighbor's property? Because this plan includes their encroachment.
And I'm just to ask for a question on clarification.
Yeah.
And welcome to the neighborhood, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't think, is this the same issue that we were just talking about? I didn't think that the review for what they were asking for approval for on this, that encroachment was any part of it. Or am I misunderstanding your question?
On the previous drawing that's shown here, it includes this, the area shaded in red is including where their existing driveway goes and how it encroaches on their neighboring property. And therefore, without the encroachment, I mean, they really can't access that garage without the encroachment. So they're including the encroachment as a part of their access. They're including their illegal encroachment on a neighbor's property as right-of-way and access to their current situation or their future situation. Currently, as the property stands, even if they're encroaching, there's not any type of change of right-of-way or access to their garage. Solely because they're changing the direction of the garage to the neighbor's property, are they now including the encroachment as a part of their right-of-way access? Does that make sense? So a part of their plan, they're including a neighbor's property as a part of their plan to be their driveway. Does that make sense? In order to be able to switch that driveway to the other side of the property, you need that encroachment.
I think we understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Cool.
But to me, this is documenting what is there,
Okay?
right? And the issue is, back to what was said at the beginning, or someone, or maybe John said this, that it was a civil matter between the two, that the fact this encroachment goes over that is, if the 21 feet is sufficient, and I have no idea if it is, sufficient to turn into there, or they believe it's sufficient, or they're never gonna park a car in their garage, that's not something in this city we typically get into, right? I understand what you're saying. They have to draw it on there because it exists. So that way it is documented, that's what's going on. The measurements don't go into that piece. The measurements talk about what's on their existing lot. Right? I don't know what's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's how I take
It's an
that.
existing map is what you're
It's an
saying.
existing map.
Right.
And when they measured it, they didn't measure it with the extra 2.5 feet. They measured it with the 21 feet, and that's how we got to here. Is it the right amount? If we think there should be a rule that says it has to be 30 feet or 20 feet, we need to make the rule. We can't change it on people midstream. That's part of the problem. There's a lot of things in this process, if you went through it over and over again, would make you miserable. Okay, we were both on the planning commission before this, and we got some of it straightened out as best you can, but like, bringing up drainage, we're not experts, we just do the best we can, right? And we expect the experts to fix it. So in my mind, how the owner uses this property, whether they put a car in there or not, is not the relevant part. They wanna move the door to the side, then they move the door to the side. As long as it's not completely unreasonable, this is fine. Right, you come to my house right now, there's no cars in the garage, none. I can park in my driveway. Okay?
Does that,
I guess if it's clear that that driveway extension is not conditional or is not added as Mr. Piper was dictating, then, okay. This is an existing drawing is what you're saying. But-
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
And there's lots of
Thank you
existing
for
problems in
asking.
this city.
any other matters, any other comments from public? Hearing none, I'll close public comment. Wishes of the,
I make a motion to receive and file.
have a second?
So the only way we can fix that driveway is to take the whole thing under review, and even then, we cannot possibly?
Right, that would kind of be a future analysis and determination with myself and staff. But yes, as of right now, the only action before you
Right,
guys
'cause it's
receive.
not part of the construction, it's separate. Okay, all right, there's a motion to receive and file, is that right?
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, and before we take a vote, I forgot to disclose, I did not go to the site visit. I was at the planning commission meeting that evening where this was discussed. Okay, now, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
That's on a roll.
Okay, so we move to
13A, Madam Mayor.
13A. It's going to be receive and file fiscal year 2024, 2025 proposed general fund revenue projections and expenditures.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm Robert Samario, your finance director.
So we don't have a blue packet for his presentation.
You need mine?
This is a continuing saga of our budget process. So today, a fairly brief report. We're here to provide you with updated general fund revenue projections for next year. And really, the thrust of this is to kind of give you an overview of the proposed general fund expenditure budget for next year, and then to present an updated general fund balancing picture. And then recommendations will be to receive and file staff reports. I will mention that, we're going to go through this broadly in just an overview fashion. As we've done in the past, council has referred these items to the Finance Committee for a more detailed discussion, and that's what we're recommending today, and we welcome any questions you might have at a detailed level. The attachments include line item accounts and changes to all that. Our plan is not to go through all that detail, but to save that for the Finance Committee and have a more detailed discussion there. But this is to just provide you more of an overview of all those numbers. So I did look at additional revenues that have come in since the time we presented this last. It's only been a few weeks, but certainly we got more data coming in. And at this point, I'm not suggesting we change any of the projections for next year, at least not at this point, except for one. I will mention that property taxes continue to concern me. I think it's going to be tough for us to achieve that year-end projection of $1,450,000 you see at the top there. But you never know, we could hit that, and we're going to continue to monitor that. In June, we'll come up with and present you really our final recommendations on the revenue side. But on the building and other permits, based on additional data we've gotten and additional analysis, I'm thinking that our initial projection of 440 may be too aggressive, and so I'm just recommending that we do lower that to 400,000 this year, and with no projected growth next year, so it'd be the same of 400,000. So a $40,000 decline, $41,000 decline, not a lot, but I think it's appropriate. On the expenditure side, again, the attachment to your report includes all the line item accounts by department for the general fund, so you're welcome to look at that and, of course, ask questions. But I wanted to kind of highlight it at a department level. And we talked about this before, that with the city administrator budget, because of the turnover in staff and then this new staff coming in at lower ranges, that we are going to be seeing savings in that department for next year. There is also a small decrease in the finance department budget of $5,100. And then planning, very little change. Public safety, we'll get into a little more detail, but you can see that we are, and I misspoke. I think that the numbers are, let me see if I make this is correct. The city administrator, and those things with negative are actually an increase in the budget, so I misspoke. So those aren't going down, those are going up, and we'll talk about why in a moment. So the budget is going up next year, even though we are going to have salary savings. And then finance is going up by $5,100, and public safety by $53,000, and city properties by $10,800. And I'll explain to you those key increases here. So in the city administrator's budget, you may recall that for this year, we did not budget for the annual payment that we make to PERS for the unfunded liability. We decided that we still got to make the payment, but remember we agreed that we would look to our Section 115 trust to reimburse us for those costs, because that was helpful in balancing the budget this year. So the baseline budget this year does not include that payment. We will have to make it next year, and so that's going to add to our budget cost next year. The one thing I'll mention is that I wanted to wait until I requested the money from PARS, for the Section 115 trust, to see how we're doing this year. And I think we are going to end up this year as a surplus, and we may not need that. But if you like, we could still request that. But if we don't need it this year, we might want to decide later to say, hey, if we want to do that next year instead, based on the numbers, we can do that. The election expense for city council, also in the city administrative budget, this is an every other year cost, so this year it's not budgeted, so we want to add that for next year. And then Wilden Building Services, and in this current year, we are seeing additional shift to their services, expedited services versus the county. And so this $15,000 increase to that budget is reflective of this current year activity that we expect to continue next year. In law enforcement, two pieces to that. Most of that $28,000 is because, really, frankly, this year's budget was too short. It was underestimated. It should have been $28,000 higher based on what we're getting as monthly bills. So we want to adjust for that going forward. And then the remaining $10,000 is just because of their CPI increase of 3% that they're going to implement next year. And then lastly, the wildlife management and pest control. This is to reflect what I think council's direction to do a little more work with the coyotes and other pests. So we want to reflect that. We have a contract for $25,000. We've not really utilized that, so this is more reflective of what we expect to do next year. So,
Robert,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, before you go on, could you hit on the unfunded liability payment? That's our, what we're contributing into the extra fund, right? And we
No.
didn't put any in before?
So that's a good question. Every year, we have to pay to PERS, in addition to our normal contribution requirements, rates, an extra payment because we have this debt on this unfunded liability, and I don't remember what that amount is, but PERS says, okay, in addition to your normal payments, you've got to pay us on this outstanding debt, a portion every year. And that portion is about $60-some thousand per year. It diminishes over time, but it's going to be over a 20-year period, or roughly 20-year period, that we're going to have to pay this off. In this current year, while we had to make the payment, we did make the payment in July, we said that because we were trying to balance the budget, that we would go to our Section 115 trust that's administered by PARS and say, we're going to ask you to reimburse us for that, so the net effect to our budget is zero. So again, I have not asked for that money yet this year because I wanted to wait and see, and we may not need it this year, so we might want to use that as an option for next year based on how we're kind of balancing. But that's what that is next year.
You need to explain the unfunded liability payment. We're way better than, we keep funding it. Nobody else does.
Right.
So when you act like we're behind, we're actually way ahead of other cities on this. We don't have
Yeah.
a big thing.
I think-
We've pre-funded it.
I think the way I would explain it is, we don't trust them, so we put the money in a different account.
Right.
And then when we need it, we pull it to pay out the minimums they give us, because we don't want to give them all the money because all the other cities are going to go broke. So when they decide to change it, we want to make sure we have the least amount of money in there, and so we've been funding it over here. So
Right.
that's just wording.
Right.
We're totally funded.
We're way ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that that is actually the unfunded liability that goes to the state. That was not our contribution into our special
Yeah, this is a required payment every year,
account.
but when you consider how much money we have in this Section 115 trust overall, in addition to the monies at PERS, we are completely funded
Oh, sure.
on our
Right.
liability. We
Right.
still have to make this payment,
Right, right.
but we are fully funded, which is great.
Right.
When we did it, we were only one of one or two cities in the state that had it
Yeah.
done. Then it got
Yeah.
to 5 cities out of all the cities in the state.
Right.
We're way ahead.
Right,
Okay.
that's true.
But are we fully funded?
When we consider the monies we have with PERS, we're about 75% funded there, but because when you add the monies we have in this with PARS for the same purpose, we are fully funded.
Because we haven't always been fully funded.
The only time we're not fully funded is when they change the rules because they figured out they don't make as much money as they keep
Yeah.
telling us they're
Right.
making.
And
Then they're like, oops, we're short another $100,000,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
we have to come up with $100,000.
another way to look at it is, you could just decide you're going to take those monies you have with PARS and send it to PERS. I wouldn't advise that, but, and then you're fully funded with them. You just have it in two pots of it, two areas.
Right.
To pull it from our dead clinging hands.
Again, I wouldn't recommend that. This is the updated balancing, so, the two kind of categories we have are the current year, 23-24, what we have the adopted budget and year-end projections, and then next year, what our preliminary projections were, that we talked about a few weeks ago, and what they are now, and they're still in flux, but we have moved from a surplus of $140,000 projected, at least on a preliminary basis, to a slight deficit. But, the numbers are still going to move, and we're going to continue to monitor that. So for now, I would sort of say, let's not worry too much about that projected deficit until we get closer to, early June, and we'll have more final numbers. And so the recommendation today is to receive and file a staff report and to refer the detailed discussion to the Finance, Budget, and Audit Committee meeting of May 6, 2024.
Thank you, John. Any other questions?
I'm here.
Or, yeah, since you're on the committee, and Jim, you're available for that date as well.
I'm sorry, what?
May 6th.
May 6th, you're good for that day as well?
We have you both calendared, but
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were on track, but you're still talking about the numbers.
No.
Yeah.
I'm on to new thing now.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, the slight deficit on property taxes. It's only April, last week was tax week, and you owed your property taxes, so we'll get a big old chunk. So I think we'll be way above our projected.
Well, I'm factoring all that in. I already factored that, so even with the current payment we got in April,
Right.
still going to be tight.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
That's fine.
The election expense that you're doing, that if that's only applies if there is an election for city council, right?
Correct.
So that we would save money if there isn't. Okay.
If the incumbents run unopposed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking, because that's savings made possible if that happens.
Yes.
But that's a lower amount than it used to be, since we're aligned with the county now. It used to
But,
be
yeah, usually like
35,000.
35, yeah, yeah,
It's 30.
yeah.
So, but this is just the increase, 15,000, so what is it total?
Budget this year, so that's the full expected
Oh,
cost
okay.
for next year.
New item this
It's a
time.
one-time.
Okay. I just was looking at the increases, so I just thought it was increase from something, yeah.
Okay, any comments from the public on this? Mr. Visco? And I see two others going up over there. We'll be sure and get to you.
Fred Visco, 15 Century. I'm sure you're going to know what I'm going to be commenting about. I want to make sure as we go through this process that we change the dead vegetation ordinance type of compliance from a complaint-driven compliance method to a proactive compliance. It's my understanding that the proactive enforcement of the dead vegetation ordinance was a pilot program, and that we're no longer doing that. We're doing it on a complaint-driven basis. Am I wrong?
I'm not going to say whether you're right or wrong, but what I am going to say is when we get down on, further on the agenda, when we're talking about the update on, we're going to talk about that.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that there's money in the budget to make this happen.
Right.
That it
Right.
be a complaint or that it be a proactive enforcement of the dead vegetation ordinance as opposed to a complaint-driven enforcement.
And that will be
Thanks.
there. Thank you, Mr. Visco. Ms. McNabb?
Melissa McNabb, 11 Quail Ridge Road South. I just wanted to ask, and I'm sorry, I don't remember from the discussions last year, where the community club funding, what line that is? Can you guys tell me that? Is it 915 community recognition?
No. It is 65, I need to look at the book.
Yeah, and I don't think it
Yeah.
doesn't,
So sorry, thank you.
Do you need more? No, serious, I'm asking.
I'm not prepared to answer that question right now, so I just wanted to see what.
Under 780, communication.
Oh, that's it. Okay, thank you.
we won't let it slip by this time.
Right.
Did anybody else, I thought I saw another hand up over there.
I think it was Melissa.
Oh, okay, all right. So hearing no more public comment.
I make
Close public comment.
a motion to receive file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert.
Have a great night, Robert.
Now, okay. So, item 13B, approve Phase 1 of the Portuguese Bend Road, Rolling Hills Road 8-inch sewer main project design and authorize staff to advertise for construction bids.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At your last meeting, we brought an item forward to you regarding monies that had come through the fiscal year 2024 program via Congressman Ted Lieu as it related to this project. This project is being brought back to you tonight, as we mentioned in that last meeting, for potential forward movement and action from the council if so desired. Just to run through some brief history with you. Back in 2020, the council engaged services of NV5 to provide engineering design for this 8-inch sewer main that goes along Portuguese Bend Road and Rolling Hills Road. It was broken by the body into two different phases. Phase 1 includes the 8-inch line going from here, from the campus, down to Lariat Lane within Rolling Hills, and would service the campus, the guard shack, and the tennis court area. The anticipated cost, approximately $1.1 million. And at the time that we were initially discussing this back then, there was talk of using the potential ARPA funds in the amount of $441,000 to help potentially fund that. Phase 2, as this body eventually broke it up into, would involve the downstream from Lariat Lane into the city of Torrance at Crenshaw. That would require an upgrading of the system at 3 different connection points, from the 8-inch to 10-inch and 12-inch pipes. The purpose of that would be to eventually, if beyond a Phase 2 into a Phase 3, if the city ever so desired, to extend sewer pipe up Portuguese Bend Road and into the community, most likely areas that are north of Crest Road, but to residences, if you ever so wanted, to provide potential sewer service to residents that wanted to get off of their current septic systems. Over the course of the past couple years, in 2022, December, you approved an amendment with Wildan to contracting them to amend the sanitary sewer feasibility study in support of the Phase 1 project. In January of 2023, Council directed staff to prepare an amended professional service agreement with MV5 to update and complete the Phase 1 sewer improvement plans. At your February 13th, 2023 meeting, you executed an amendment with MV5. They proceeded then to update the plans. Those were approved by Rolling Hills Estates on December 1st of 2023. The estimate within that time changed and was then estimated to come up to a $1.219 million project, which included a field order allowance of $60,000 and a 10% contingency amount of just over $100,000. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, in March of 2023, the city submitted a fiscal year 2024 community funding request to Congressman Liu's office. In March of this year, we received notice that the city's application had been approved for $1 million in funding towards the execution of Phase 1. At this time, I will invite Alan Palermo to come up, and he can provide any further details, but really what we are asking for here is discussion and/or action as related to whether the city should go out and formally solicit bids for the construction amounts for Phase 1 of this project. And I'll hand it over to Alan.
Hi, Mr. Palermo.
Good evening, Alan Palermo, consultant for the city. Christian did a great job of summarizing the events leading up to this point today. So, as he stated, the plans have been approved by Rolling Hills Estates. Next step would be to take the project out to bid and move forward if the council so desires. Are any specific questions? Yes.
Currently, right now, so we get it up to here through Phase 1.
Yes.
Which does not, Phase 2 is the sizing of the corner down the hill.
Phase 2 upgrades the sewer that runs through the city of Torrance, correct? And make the
So,
connection in the Crenshaw.
Without Phase 2, how, is there a limit on how many houses, because though we're approved for, I don't remember the number exactly, 220 houses being connected to it? 235 houses. Is there a limit to how many houses / buildings we could connect to Phase 1 before we are forced to upsize Phase 2?
That was not pursued at the time. So at the time that we discussed doing just the City Hall campus, we presented to the other agencies, both Rolling Hills Estates, City of Torrance, and LA County, who have also reviewed the sewer study, and said at this time, we're just looking to connect the campus. We didn't do any further studies to see how many homes the existing sewer system could take.
And the answer might be 0.
The answer might be 0, or it could be 5, it could be 10, we don't know.
Okay, because part of my, just knowing who's gonna build a house just slightly up the hill. If I was building that house, I would rather spend 300 grand to get to the sewer
Sure.
than to put in a new septic, which then gets the pipe slowly up the hill. So that, okay, so we don't, so in this process, we could learn what that number could be, so we could draw a circle on a map and figure out who connects and who doesn't to this first phase?
I mean, it's a pretty, the calculation analysis is actually pretty simple.
Okay,
It's then going through the process of amending the sewer study to get
Okay.
the other agencies to buy into it.
okay.
An 8-inch line, how many houses is that big enough for?
It depends on the slope of the line.
235.
Right.
So, no, 235 is what they thought the 8-inch line would handle, because, or is it, we need to go and put in a 10 or a 12?
No, the 8-inch line that runs, that would be connected from the City Hall
Right.
campus down to the first manhole in Rolling Hills Estates, that was sized to accommodate the full 234 lots.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's, as you know, the road is fairly steep, it's
Mhm.
running I think the sewer line's running 2, 3, 4%, so
Right.
that increases flow. The constriction was at the downstream end in Torrance.
Okay, so the 8-inch is plenty big enough
Yes,
for our city.
yes.
I have a question. So as I understand, in the staff report, they're estimating over and above the 1 million that we anticipate to get from Congressman Liu's office, that there is, with the three costs, the 219,000 for the estimate, the 60,000 field order allowance, 10% contingency, 111,230. That amounts to 390,230. Do you think that's realistic for the upcharges from the estimated, for the estimate for phase one?
NV5, they did, that when they prepared this new estimate, they pulled data from other projects, current projects that they were involved with in the late last year. So they felt pretty comfortable with those numbers. That looks to be in line, but as we know, when you go out to bid, that's when you find out what the true costs are. But it looks pretty reasonable.
And Councilmember Derringer, if I might, you're adding the 1.2 million to the 60 to the 111. Those are included, it says.
Well, I'm talking about what was over the 1 million. That's what I added up.
Right, over the 1 million, it'd just be the 219,000, the 60,000 field order allowance and 100,000+ in contingency. That's already built into the 1,219,000.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So,
Okay.
just to get the question out of the way that's gonna come in a minute, is, since Ted Lieu is giving us the $1 million, we can only use the $1 million solely for this project, or we have to give it back,
Correct.
okay? And if we don't continue, there's the risk, if we don't continue to slowly move forward on the sewer, is we have right now 235 house capacity that they've assigned to us through LA County. And as long as we show that we're using it, when they build 3 or 4 11-story buildings over in wherever the heck that is, Rolling Hills Estates, and they're gonna need capacity, is part of the reason we're doing this is to put our foothold into the capacity so we do not lose it.
Yeah, you're talking about capacity of the downstream systems to
Yes.
treat the sewer.
So, because my understanding, as long as we are moving forward and from my standpoint, as slowly as possible, is then they will keep us with that capacity.
Not necessarily. The capacity is taken up at the time that you submit applications to connect to the system. And then they assess and then you pay the connection fees. So until you actually get that we have the will serve letter as part of the study, but until you actually pay the connection fees, that's when you reserve your capacity in the system.
So we're building a sewer to nowhere right now, and then we have to decide if we're gonna build a sewer from nowhere to somewhere, and that's where we're told if we get capacity.
So right now, we're talking about spending $100,000 or $200,000 on the sewer to nowhere, because Ted Lieu gave us $1 million of your tax money.
Right.
So with the $1 million of your tax money, we now, for $200,000 gets here, which is less than 1 septic tank. When HOA has one, we have one, and when we redo these bathrooms, you guarantee you they're gonna tell us to replace the septic tank. And so right there is a $350,000, $300,000, well, It costs the rest of us, $150,000 to build a septic tank, which means the city has to pay $450,000 for the same septic tank, right? So because of that, this is, the fact that Ted Lieu's gonna give us $1 million, which we need to write him a handwritten thank you note. Thank you. So we do that, then it's really only 200 grand-ish to get it to here. And if we get it to here, maybe when Willis bulldozes the other half of his property, he might wanna spend a little money to start getting it up the hill. Do I think I'm gonna be alive by the time there's sewer at my house and I'm down here? No. I will definitely be dead by then. But if we don't get it to here, we can't get it to the next spot. It's just slowly moving it away, just like John's Canyon got it slowly up Morgan and is added three more houses got added. And then the next people add 2 or 3 more houses. This is the slowest moving train you've ever been on. And if it was $1.2 million of our money, even though I'm the one pushing this thing along, I probably would have voted no, but not for 200 grand.
But it doesn't go anywhere.
It goes to here. And if we're gonna protect.
Then we need another 2 million to get to hook it up. To get from there down to Ralph's.
No. There's already a sewer there. There's a sewer.
That's, the phase 2 is the part of the project that would be needed at some point when you can make connections beyond the city hall.
Bigger
campus.
capacity. So we don't know is, right now, we know we can connect that building, this
Right.
building, and the tennis courts and whatever to
But
it.
no houses.
Well, we don't know. No one ever asked.
That's only that's what's been approved is just the city hall campus, the tennis courts, and the gatehouse. Right, nobody's asked, nobody did the study, because that wasn't what was asked at the time to see, well, how many homes could we connect? So say you do phase 1, then maybe you look at it and say, okay, does phase 2.5, which gets a sewer line to connect the first maybe 20 homes, does the downstream facility downstream sewer still have capacity?
But if there is capacity for 5 or 20 homes, they're gonna pay to connect to the existing sewer line.
Right, so that's when you would pay your connection fees to LA County Sanitation for the downstream connections.
And the cost of not just the
And then
connection
the cost
cost,
of the sewer to
but
get
the
to their home.
construction, right? So that's not gonna be on us to extend the sewer line. I mean, somebody's gonna have to pay the first, whatever, the initial cost. But if somebody's far up the street and they do the connection, do they get, I don't know if it's called a subsidy, but do they get reimbursement for people that connect in between?
They call them latecomer fees. So if I lived at wherever, 17 Portuguese Bend, and I decided I wanted to drop $1 million to get the sewer to my house, is you could ask everyone along the way. If everyone said no, then we would come up with a math equation, so when they connect later, they have to pay a proportionate part of what that looks like. Latecomer fees is what they call it in development.
Any other questions for Mr. Palermo? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to open this up for public comment. Mr. Rain?
Charlie Rain, 1987 was a settlement of the Flying Triangle landslide. The city was one of the defendants. The end result of that settlement, or the decision, they had the jury fill out a poll of how they attributed percentages of blame for the various entities, either the plaintiffs or all the defendants. And one of the questions was, did the residents, basically the watering and their septics, contribute to the landslide? The answer was 0%. They had 0% contribution. So to consider this as landslide abatement is ludicrous. So, and a whole bunch of things here. So everybody,
Excuse me. Bless you.
Are you
the
sick?
assumption is that everybody in the city, including the city hall, including the association building, if somebody wants to use the toilet now, it's gonna flush, it's gonna work. So who in their right mind is going to spend an enormous amount of money tying into a sewer line when they already have a working septic system that, if it goes bad, typically requires a repair, not a replacement? And replacement for private property is about $100,000 now. It's not more than that. So to to think that anybody would spend good money after bad is, I think, a pie in the sky. I don't know why anybody, I mean, Jeff, you're the closest. Would you really connect to a sewer?
Well, I mean, I want to, but yes, and I spent 20 years ago, $150,000 on my septic.
No,
So,
that surprises me.
Uh,
So anyways, I know it's not a discussion. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here, so.
No, no. Okay, fire.
Plow forward. Years ago, we had property in the city of LA. The city of LA, the way they treated their sewer fees, and I don't know where this eventually goes, or I don't know how Torrance charges, but the city of LA charged based on the water usage. So if you have a big yard and you're watering a lot in your yard, their consideration is that all the water that you bring in is water they're treating going out. So not only do you pay an enormous amount of money, whatever it's gonna be, the years when it's finally able to do it, plus the road obstructions and the traffic, every time somebody ties in or extends it further, all the work projects going on. But you are, you're gonna be paying on a monthly basis where you don't pay it all now. Unless you got a new septic and you've got the county maintenance on it. So anyways, it's gonna be a big difference in the monthly billing. And I think when people start considering that, we'll be less likely to wanna join in on the sewer line. The hazard mitigation. The city has this hazard mitigation plan, final draft, 2019, and it talks about about 70 pages in, land movement. And it talks about land movement, landslide abatement, the various landslides that are affected. I don't think there's any landslide abatement issues in that whole 180-page report that I could find that mentioned anything about sewer lines being a cure to landslide abatement. So that takes me last, and I'm trying to go fast because I think I got stuff. Ted Lieu's announcement. Ted Lieu's announcement, I'm gonna read it because it's pretty short. $1 million for Rolling Hills landslide mitigation project. This project will improve, will improve wastewater flow in the city of Rolling Hills and mitigate the risks of landslide. A portion of the city is within the Flying Triangle landslide area where unique topography and excess soil moisture increase the threat of catastrophic landslides. By constructing new sewer main lines, this project will prevent discharge that would otherwise contribute to soil moisture, worsening the landslide risks in the community. Well, it's complete BS. So I don't know what the city's proposal to Ted Lieu went like, but I can look back and in the 50 years since the landslide started, 45 years, I can't recall the city spending any money to do anything to study what's going on down there, to do anything as far as spending money to do something that could either mitigate it or do studies that say, here's the issues and what can be done to mitigate. Whether they do it or not, at least have a plan forward. There's no plan forward. And when I was researching this stuff, I went back and I looked, pulled up LA Times historical articles, and there's all kinds of stuff that was gonna happen that never happened. The city, the association, who, is a whole other story. But all these things that were gonna happen, the responsibilities that people took on and have continued to do nothing. And here you are spending, and this is the high-speed train to nowhere. This is Rolling Hills version of the high-speed rail to me. That, why build it? Nobody really wants to use it. I don't think people are gonna wanna use it. It's gonna be prohibitively expensive, and just because you have the money to use the money, I think it's just a waste. I don't know what it goes back to and what it gets assigned to if you don't use it for this, but it's a huge waste for what you're doing. I wish the application had requested that be used for something that actually is an active landslide. It sits above, the whole Seaview tract is on the west side, and I don't know if you've been down there, I've been in houses down there, disaster for them. It's the whole emotional roller coaster that my parents went through in the 1979, 1980. And when I look at our watershed that goes down, that hits Seaview, and then you go to the other side, Quail Ridge area, that goes down, and it's Portuguese Canyon and one or two others, Ishibashi. That's going down, the whole upper Portuguese Bend area, which was in a zone 2, which is not an active landslide. It was not an active landslide, no historical movement, is going nuts. I went to a client's house and they moved 3 feet in their front yard in 3 months, and no historical movement before. And that's on Vanderbilt, that's one of the original houses in the peninsula. So this is just, I think, just a slap in the face to all the people that are really suffering with landslide. So, that's it.
The person who wrote the request doesn't work here anymore. We didn't write it, we didn't send it, never even ran it past us, and that's how it got written that way.
Yeah. And I did both Ted Liu's response, I mean, I don't know why they.
Because he probably didn't read it either.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't know.
Can I-
It has nothing to do with landslide mitigation. Zero.
No, and-
We have to understand, it has zero to do
And
with
when you-
landslide.
And when you look at how it was written, that wasn't what our focus was, the application. The application did say that we were in, the part of our city was, that was in the application. But this was something, it was an opportunity for us, and I live up by where you do, so you know I'm very concerned about what's down there. This was an opportunity for us. We didn't have and I hate to use this expression, a shovel-ready project that we could get funds for anything we might even be considering over there, but, like even to start to plan. We had this shovel-ready thing here that we did not have, we'd spent money on, we didn't have the money to do anything with it, so it's just sitting on the closet. And when we're seeing all these monies that are coming from the Tax Act, or whatever it was called,
Inflation Reduction Act.
Pardon me, the Inflation Reduction Act, and we're seeing it, we look to see what did we have that might qualify for. We might think that that's very important over there, but we didn't have anything that was ready to go on it. This was ready, and it was able to get approved. I'm disappointed, and at the time, just to back up a little bit, went back quite a ways, we weren't having the more recent terrible activity that's been happening here. Yeah. I was personally disappointed at how, and this is when politics can get really annoying, I think Mr. Liu's constituents are focused on, everybody out in the public is thinking, oh, this is, if we say this is for landslide, land movement mitigation. I was a little disappointed in the wording of it, and I thought, well, this doesn't sound good. But if we didn't do it for this project, it would go, we'd have to give it back, and it would go to something that we might think is even a worse, even a worse thing, but would not necessarily benefit our community at all. And I know you didn't ask me specifically. I love living in Rolling Hills. When people say, what's the first thing, if you could change anything about your house, I'd say that I'd have a septic tank. If I didn't live up on the top where we are, if I lived anywhere down here, I would pay even personally to get onto a septic tank. And I also think as the county has started to make us go away, forcing places to go away from having their on-site waste disposals, I think that it's something someday we may be forced to have. And like so many things they do, they force you to have it, but there's no funding for it. So I think we looked at it as kind of an overall way of trying to get something. We're not, I can't make it sound any better.
One other way to think about it, if you were Ted Lieu and Ted Lieu made that announcement, he will never make that announcement again because he's not gonna give another $1 million to Rolling Hills for landslide abatement, so he won't do it. Why, I mean, why would he?
look horrible for him. But if the money did go back, and you said, we found a better use for it, the Portuguese Bend is suffering, Seaview is suffering, our Flying Triangle landslide is moving like crazy right now because of the association.
I wish that government worked that way. Have you ever heard of any government ever
No,
saying,
no.
well, no, they didn't use this, they gave it back to me, and so I'm gonna use it for something else?
All I'm saying is that
Yeah.
he's not gonna give you the money again, not for this, but if you gave back and said, we took it under, you know,
Right.
we have a better use for it, give it to somebody else, and we'd like to reapply for something for next year. That's, because you'll never get another headline saying that you went for Flying Triangle landslide mitigation, and that's where the real disaster is. That's my opinion.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Visco?
Kill this project. Alfred Visco from 15 Century Road. I agree with Charlie about the septic tank issue. It's a non-issue in my mind. I've never heard of a case anywhere or any study that actually has proven that land movement has been caused by septic systems. Okay? It's either broken water lines, or broken sewer lines, or just, that's the way it is. Okay? And I've done a lot of research since Charlie brought this up last year about the fact that the water in Klondike Canyon, previous rain season, didn't go any, it's basically sunk into the soil and didn't really flow out. And Charlie and I have communicated on this, and we've done research. I've done all the research on this. Be that as it may, this has never been my favorite project. Okay, even when he didn't have the $1 million. Okay, I always thought it was, as I've heard before, it's a sewer line to nowhere. And I agree with that. It's our version of the bullet train. I agree with that. Simply because you have the $1 million doesn't mean you have to spend it. Okay, 219,000 over the $1 million. You have 219,000 to throw into this project. I'd much rather you spent the 219,000 in wildfire mitigation, or use that money where it could actually be of some use over in the Flying Triangle area, or in the gradually increasing movement as it approaches our border from the south in the Altamira Canyon area, and the Ishibusi and Portuguese Bend and Paintbrush Canyon. Don't waste. This isn't, by the way, this is only an estimate. I'd be very surprised if the overall project is $1,219,000. You have 219,000 to throw into this project when you have other projects that are, in my view, more important now, rather than anticipating in the future what may or may not be required as concerning our septic system up here. This was never a good project. It isn't a good project. It will never be a good project. Kill the project. Thank Ted Lieu very much. Tell him to take the $1 million and give it to the people down in RPV to help them mitigate the land movement. It's a Band-Aid. But frankly, the numbers that I'm seeing down there are ridiculously low. There's no way they're gonna, that's another issue.
Thank
But
you, Mr.
Let's just get rid of this project. Really, give them $1 million back to
I
Ted.
understand.
And stop messing around with something that's never going to fly.
Thank you, Mr. Visco. Any other comments from the public? Okay, we'll close the public comment section. What are the wishes of the council? Hello?
Well, I'll say something in defense of my colleagues here. This came up because the concern that the city of Malibu, which is also on septic, was being told by the State and Coastal Commission they could not have any septic tanks for replacements. So they had to look at possibly doing sewers. And the concern here was that would happen to all cities because the state was threatening to do that to all cities. And so people wanted to do look at the possibility of a sewer line for when the time comes that no septic tanks are allowed and no replacements are allowed. That being said, so I think the motives are good and farsighted. Years ago, I was on a group with the previous council, Alan Lay, Godfrey Purnell, and myself, and we actually got bids on low-flow sewers. I don't know if people recall. And we presented it to the city and this, that. And if you've ever seen a vote on a undergrounding area where you see the yes versus no's, it's quite amazing how many people say no. The septic was far less than that. Nobody was willing to spend the money to go to a sewer if they had a functioning septic. Not one. I don't think we got a single yes vote. So people aren't, I mean, we have that documentation. People really don't want to pay money to go on a septic, on a sewer if they got a functioning septic. If they're forced to, it's kind of different. So personally, I'm, you know, I don't like the project, but I do like the motivations, and I think the people did it. I can understand why you did it. That's all.
Do you think throwing good money after bad, is that what you'd
That's
be
what
saying?
I've said many times.
Okay, but I just want, because we're gonna make a decision tonight, hopefully, and so I
Well, you don't
want
have
the.
to, because you can set it out for bid, and if it comes back way higher than this number, you just don't do it. So you can let it go out to bid, and if it comes out this number or less, you can decide then if you want to do it. If it comes out way higher, then you kill it then. I wanted to kill it a couple times over the years, but now that you're here, getting a bid doesn't hurt, honestly.
And honestly, that's where I'm at too, is one, we do stuff all over the city. That's what we're supposed to do. And I totally understand where Charlie's coming from. That's a thing that exists.
And it's a better project.
And
he's absolutely right.
and-
You're absolutely right, Charlie.
Lee and I talk about this and meet on this constantly, trying to figure out how, what, where on that. We are undergrounding on Eastfield. We had a small problem of $1 million something, and Pat solved it by asking Janice Hahn to get us more Title 20A money, and we're now undergrounding the rest of Crest and part of the way down there. We're spending money on fire mitigation on the other side, on those canyons. We got some grant money. In the past, we used to never get grant money. We always thought, if we ignore them, they'll ignore us. And that doesn't happen anymore, and they're all over us, about everything. So then we got grant money to do the fire mitigation on the far side. We have a sinkhole over here. We got maybe another sinkhole over on Middle Ridge. Water is everywhere. Do I think the description could have been better written? Sure. Do I think, and that's where I disagree, is if we give him back the money, we're never seeing that money. He's already gotten his buzz from the headline. It's not gonna change the second time around, and he's not gonna say, well, they gave it back, so now I'm gonna give it to them again. We asked, can we redirect it? And they said no. And that was that. It was the end of the conversation. So my viewpoint right now is we already have almost everything we need to go out to bid. We go out to bid and we see how close we are. In my mind, we would be so short-sighted if this costs $200,000, $300,000 to do whatever that looks like, since that money exists, because we're gonna spend that much of our money to do the HOA and do the city at some point relatively soon. And to me, that's just a trade-off on dollars, and I totally get the city. We know the people who live here will not spend money on anything. We all live here because we don't spend money on anything. At the same time, there's a lot more yellow Porsches than there used to be, and a lot less F-150s. So it is evolving for where we're going. So this is a forever moving slow project, and I think the risk of them saying no more building on septic, no more replacement septic, what the hell do we do if that happens? We're gonna go out to everyone and say everyone has to write a check for $400,000 and we're gonna solve this thing? So to me, if we can keep getting sewer to this city slowly but surely, it's only taken us, 8 years to get to this point on this project? We already got it at one point, we get it here, at some point we have to deal with how to get it toward Eastfield, and we see where it goes. So you have anything else to say, or no?
Yeah,
I'll make a
I
motion.
agree with Mayor Pro Tem Piper. I think it's, I've worked for government my whole life. They never will redirect their money. Okay, you got it, you have to take it. Or it goes, it's out. And no rewards for giving it back, it doesn't happen. I mean, I'm a government person, I'm telling you, this is the real life in government. So, as we mentioned about how that was worded, that's not on us, you know, but we have a situation where I think we owe it to our residents. We're gonna be fixing up, thanks to their partnering with our association to fix up the tennis court area, to make it a place where people come and celebrate being in Rolling Hills. We already had the previous septic tank go kaput on us, and the association had to put in a new one. But, you know, those are not forever and ever and ever. But if these buildings here are places where people come, we have the Christmas party here, we have all kinds of events over at the association, they're using the facilities. We want a dependable system for that. So even if it doesn't go to any other houses, it's worth it for our residents. And I know that people differ about it, but it's not a matter of picking this over anything else. We did not pick it, it got given to us. And we tried to put in for a project that was ready, but that's about it. If we didn't have anything else, there wasn't a choice to say, oh, we want to do it for this. They're not gonna let you choose. So however good the project may be, better than this, they're not gonna let you choose. So I think this is something we should pursue, and that our residents are worth having a good sewer system for this civic center here, you know, when they come and visit, party, and use the facilities.
Pat?
So my support for this project has always been based on its merits and not the unfortunate description that was in the press release, because I remember when I saw that, probably moments after it came out, I called Karina and said, Karina, what is
Sure did
this
call
all
me.
about?
We all did.
When did we get landslide mitigation money? And then she had to call me back. Oh, apparently the way the application was written, it was referenced, and, you know, I think the congressman or his press release person may have overemphasized some aspects of it and not the sexy sewer part as much as we would have liked. But, so it's not because it's not doing landslide mitigation. That expectation was never there for me to begin with. When I read it, I couldn't understand what I was reading, so I had to get clarification. But the other part I asked about if the sewer was, then if we installed the sewer to the Civic Center and then it was extended, who would pay? I'm not really expecting that somebody's gonna jump out with a desire to spend probably hundreds of thousands of dollars to hook up a sewer anytime soon, but that opportunity, at least the foundation for it, would exist. Or more importantly, if it was forced, if it was mandated, at least there would be an opportunity instead of having an undeveloped lot that couldn't be built, or a septic tank that needed to be replaced but couldn't be at some time in the future. So I think the economics of this makes sense. The $1 million that we're getting, I'm not a big fan of taking other people's money and using it for what we do, but if we don't take it, it's gonna get used somewhere else. That money is going to get spent, and that subsidy, if you will, the $1 million compared to the hopefully $200,000 to $300,000 or less that we would have to pay, does, in my opinion, pencil out. It makes economic sense, because that's the cost of, well, our cost for one septic tank. You know, for a private resident, it wouldn't cost that much, but if we have to replace one, or the association does, or at any point in the future, it's money that we could have spent. Charlie brings up a good point, because once we connect, then there is sewer service fees that I don't think anybody's looked at that. I haven't heard any numbers thrown around. I mean, it's one thing to get the sewer to the building, but then you need to start paying for those fees. That's probably the LA County, I would assume. I have no idea. I haven't paid a sewer service fee in many decades, because most of us don't pay those here with their own septic tanks. Even my business location has a septic tank in Los Angeles, if you can believe that. And when I got my first sewer service fee for several $100s, I called him up and said, hey, you can't charge me for a sewer service fee if I don't have a sewer. And the woman on the other end assured me that I was in the city of LA and certainly I was connected to a sewer. And I said, I went out and took a picture of the septic tank and sent it back, and I got it waived. But, you know, that's a one charge that we don't have in Rolling Hills. I don't know what that's gonna be. I don't know if anybody has an estimate on that. I'm sure it's not gonna be cheap, and it's just gonna increase the expense over time. So that is something that we would have to account for and certainly budget for. But anyway, I think I've supported this from the beginning. I was hesitant to give full support with the costs that were in front of us, and at one point I threw up my hands and said, there's no way I'm gonna encumber the city's budget or treasury with that much money. But now it's a little bit different, and I think the money would be appropriately spent.
Okay.
I make a motion, we have,
Can I?
oh,
do I
sorry.
get- Can I?
I thought you were waving around.
That's okay, I'm sorry. I just go on record, first of all, I personally don't think that septic, as everybody has said, that the septic is an issue. I mean, the impact of septic tanks, to me, is de minimis on the slide land movement issue. So this is gonna sound really naive, and Corinne, I'm gonna ask you or perhaps Christian on this. I know if we give the money back, if we just say we're not gonna use it, and we say, Ted Lieu's office, thank you very much, but we can't build this project, we can't use it, take it back. Is there, and I know you're a government employee, and I know you understand that, but what if we said, I don't want to give it back to you, Ted Lieu, but can we combine it, find another, in other words, could we earmark it? Is there a chance that if we reached out to them and we said, there's a greater need over here in our partner city, and that, you know, a city next door to us, does that sound too naive? And if they say no, then we're right back where we are right now. But is that worth somebody like Pat got, you know, sometimes maybe some good things can happen through government?
Great question. And yes, when I received the initial call, we, meaning I know Christian was a part of these email threads, asked, what if we change the title? What if we change the description? What if we had a different project? And it all boils down to is when the initial request was made, the funding was allocated because it went through the application process and considered for that one particular project. So in order for us to even think about earmarking it, we'd have to resubmit an application and request for that funding. We'd have to return it to them. It's a whole different project to be reviewed. They wouldn't necessarily be holding the $1 million for us.
And I understand that aspect of it. I'm just wondering if there isn't a special circumstance here. They're the ones that are kind of, right, it's popular right now to be saying land movement. I mean, there's a lot of focus on that in this area. Would it be even worth a contact to ask? Because the purpose of it is still land movement. And they're going to be given a lot of money to RPV, so it's not like we're making up something. I mean, maybe that sounds naive. So I don't know what people's thoughts are on that. As far as where we are right now, I had supported this project from the beginning. I'm getting a little more hesitant on it. But on the other hand, one of my pet peeves in people in government is you make decisions and you're no longer in government when it comes time for what happens as a result of the decisions that you made. And that can be for the good or the bad. In other words, sometimes you are short-sighted, and so you don't think long-term enough, or sometimes you think too long-term and things change, because you don't know what's gonna happen in 10 years from now. And so there's a part of me that says, I agree with what's being said as far as trying to think out. I don't want people to be saying, gee, what were they thinking about? Why didn't they use this money when they had the chance? But then there's another part of me that says, we aren't as flush in money as we were maybe several years ago. So I don't know, but I would be willing to, and it probably shouldn't be me because I'm not a supporter, but to reach out to Mr. Wu's office and even at least ask if you would all be, let's suppose a miracle happened and they said they could do that. Would we be willing to do that?
Here's
They
my-
give it to RPV to work on
They
landslide.
gave, and I'm not saying it's enough money. They already gave him $27 million, and then I thought Janice Hahn or somebody gave him another $5 million on top of that. The dollars they're talking about over there are massive.
Right.
So, one, and they're gonna need massive amounts more.
Millions more,
Right?
that's right.
And we keep asking them like, what do you do? What do you think we should do? We ask them all these questions, we don't hear anything from
I
them.
understand.
Right? My concern is, we've asked the question, the answer already from them was no. And if we keep going back and ask and ask and ask again, unless you're like, just kill this thing, if you're like, if you guys wanna make this thing just go away and it's dead, then to go back and say, hey, we got this other idea, can we do this instead? Then there's in my mind, a small chance that's gonna happen. I think it's so complicated on their side to get something through the appropriation committees, to get this thing on the list, to get it approved, to get whatever that's gonna be, it's just gonna go away. Because, one, honestly, I think he thought he finally reached out to us and did something. This city does not vote for him, right? We didn't vote for Janice Hahn, and we didn't vote for him. Janice Hahn gave us $1 million toward the undergrounding on Eastfield, and he just gave us $1 million toward this project, right? And I know it's our tax dollars, and we're gonna get them back, but I truly don't believe you're gonna put that into the system and they're gonna come back. I haven't called his office, I've called other people's office to try to see if we can negotiate something and improve something. It is the most unbelievable process I've ever seen. I just feel like if we're gonna do this, we go back to the well again and say, we really, really mean it, let's switch it. We really wanna do this, they're just gonna say, you know what? Either do it or don't. I just think that we're adding a lot more risk into this, so.
All right, I have a motion, can somebody make a motion, please?
I make
I'm
a-
sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's okay, no, I'm sorry I cut you off. All right, I make a motion, we approve as presented, and we authorize staff to advertise for construction bids.
Second.
Can I just ask a question on that before we put it up for vote? That, as Jim said, that we understand that if things come back, I mean, we're not committed to spending any money right now. We're merely committed to this, right? And if it comes back and it's another issue,
If it's $10 million, we're gonna vote no. Yes.
We will make that decision when it,
when it happens,
here.
right? But I just wanted to make sure, before I voted, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something here.
We're voting to advertise for bids.
Okay, all right.
That was the motion, at least.
So we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. You opposed?
No, I don't mind getting a bid.
Okay. All right. Thank you, more to,
Supports the
more to
project.
come.
I know,
More
that's
to
the first
come.
time I've ever voted yes on
Thank you for your patience and sitting your input and sitting through all that. Oh my God, I got so excited I lost my place here.
13C.
13C, approve a professional service agreement, with Hotline Construction to provide potholing services for the 20B portion of the Eastfield Drive Fire Prevention Power Line Undergrounding Project.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. As you know, we have two utility undergrounding projects, one on Crest Road East, which is actually, our portion is currently under construction, and then we have the Eastfield Drive project, which goes from Outrider to Hackamore. As part of the process, Edison prepares designs, both for the section that they are in complete control of, which is the 20A portion. Those are the monies that will be used from Janice Hahn, along with our existing 20A funding. And then there's the 20B portion, which is the longer portion of the project. Edison does provide designs, and we're at the preliminary design phase with them. But it is required for us to go out, because we control this aspect of the project, to go out and do potholing, which is basically checking for existing utilities and infrastructure under the street in the areas where they have proposed putting vaults. Staff went out with a request for proposals. We did get back 5 different responses. And so what is in your packet tonight is staff's recommendation to solicit Hotline Construction Incorporated. You will notice in your packet they are not the lowest proposer. The reason why staff could not select the lowest proposer is because they did not meet the merits of the proposal and did not, basically, in short, they decided to propose doing cold patches over the potholing as opposed to meeting the RHCA standards for patching the road properly. And so therefore, we are recommending Hotline Construction. Once the potholing services are done and we present that information to Southern California Edison, they will be able to move forward into final design, which allows us to then continue the process and hopefully, ideally, barring any further delays or issues outside of our control, finish up this project by next May. And that's all I have. I'm available for questions, and Alan is here as well if you have any technical questions.
Council members have questions for either Mr. Palermo or for Christian?
I do. This might be for Alan, though.
Bless you.
What is the diameter of the potholes that they're going to do?
Oh, they're not diameters, they're trenches. So they'll be about 6 to 12-inch wide trenches. The vaults, I think, are around 13 to 18 feet. So they're doing a diagonal trench through where the vault is proposed to go to confirm that there's no other utilities or potential conflicts.
Are they ever going to use cold patch for this?
In the request for proposal, we included the RHCA standard for pavement repair. They clearly called out how they're supposed to repair the pavement afterward. And the low bidder wrote in, or Aztec wrote in, that they were going to cold patch. And discussing with both RHCA and the city, we all agreed that was not acceptable. And I did contact Aztec and confirm that they did intentionally put cold patch, and they did, because in their minds, even though the request for proposal said otherwise, they just assumed that construction was going to take place immediately, so they didn't see the need to go back. They did say, well, we can get a quote for you from a sub, because they were at a sub, they can use a hot AC, and at that point I said, well, don't do anything at this time.
And I noticed that the bids from most of them, maybe all of them, they were, what is that special category, disabled veteran? Is that? mean any-
Business owned? You
Yeah.
mean business owned?
DVBA, I think.
Yeah, does our city give special consideration for that?
So I don't know that as a city we particularly focus on that, but this is a federal, part of a federal grant process. And so when we are doing construction bids like we did for the 20C portion, we are required actually to put it out and request that we get women business, there are certain categories, that being one of them. And so the federal government wants to make sure that everybody is having an opportunity to bid and that you're putting it out to those types of agencies.
But I mean, do they get?
In this case, I think because we're putting the RFP out on the same online service, it's going to all those entities automatically. So there's just a good chance that they might fall into that category. As a matter of fact, Hotline, when they responded to us, made sure to mention that they were a women-owned business.
But usually that involves some kind of, they get special consideration, whatever that might be, points. I mean, I don't think our city does
We're
that
not,
kind of thing.
we're not, we do not have a point
So
system here in
there's no,
evaluation.
if two bids were equal and one is a special category and one's not, one wouldn't have any more,
More
Only-
points.
Only if your project was required to meet a minimum threshold for, woman-owned business or minority-owned or veteran-owned.
okay. I suppose this project probably isn't big enough to fall in that category. Okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll open, thank you, Alan. I'll open for any public comment on this? Jim, were you getting up or just, oh, okay, all right. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close. Wishes of the council?
I make a motion, we approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Let's see, 13D, like dog. Oh my God, can I see your 13D? Thank you. 13D is going to be approve the Rolling Hills Community Association lead responsibility for the combined tennis court, ADA, and cabana projects, and city to take lead for construction of the subsequent tennis court #1 expansion project. Is Kristen here?
She's in the back.
Oh, hi. You were so quiet back there, I didn't see you.
Sure, Madam Mayor, good evening, members of City Council. The item before you was brought to you at the last council meeting as an update. The difference this evening is that staff has been collaborating and communicating extensively with the community association to find ways to really bring this project to the finish line. And a lot of it has to do with what is the best solution that fits the project, but also to ensure that it's efficient, cost efficient, and effective. This evening is exactly that. Staff is coming before you to seek council direction to allow staff to work with association for them to take lead on the combined tennis court ADA and cabana project, while the city takes lead for the construction of the subsequent tennis court 1 expansion. Now, the reason why the staff is presented in this fashion is because it really explains if we were to continue on as it is originally presented, where we would take on the ADA and the retaining wall, we would make those, that construction first, followed by the tennis courts. Well, all the work that we would have completed would have to have been ripped out and redone in order for them to be able to accomplish the tennis courts at the time. So we are requesting the council allow us to do the swap so we can make sure that the ADA, the cabana, and the retaining wall are done first, and then staff, the council would then approve for us to continue to bring in the tennis court construction at that time. Now, the city council has already appropriated funding in the amount of $300,000 out of the capital improvement fund, which is initially intended for the court's ADA project. Staff is today seeking that the council reappropriate that funding to go towards the tennis court 1 expansion. Now, Alan is here this evening to talk a little bit about the costs and the fiscal impacts, and Kristen as well is here from the community association to talk about this if you need to have her speak this evening.
Any questions from council, the staff, or Mr. Palermo, or Kristen? Okay, I won't, all right. Hearing none, I'll open for public comment, please. Nobody wants to talk on this? Kristen?
Don't egg her on.
No, I'm not egging her on. I'm not egging her on. I'm not egging her on. Okay. All right, hearing none, I'll close public comment. What wishes council?
I make a motion, we approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, thank you.
And for those who are interested, on the third page has the dates and the ranges. that might be handy for people who play pickleball or tennis.
Okay, now we're going to go back
To 12.
to 12, and I apologize. 12A, receive and file an update from Site Logic regarding the solar photovoltaic dual fuel emergency generator, et cetera.
Madam Mayor, this evening, we are going to split this presentation in two. Christian will give you an overview of the project itself and how we got to today, based on council direction, and then followed by the presentation by Site Logic.
Okay. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go through, because we have discussed this quite a bit in recent weeks, I'm going to go through this pretty quick, but as you know, last April, Site Logic was invited here to present to you alternative approaches for solar battery backup solutions. Part of their process included utilizing the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, which is a federal tax credit. The project would be a sole source project, turnkey design build, and fits within California Government Code 4217.10. The investment here helps meet our California energy efficiency and renewable mandates. June 12th of last year, you directed staff to engage Site Logic Services. June 26th of last year, you adopted the budget, which included a $250,000 capital investment towards the solar battery backup project. December 14th of last year, Site Logic came back. They presented their initial findings. You directed us to explore cost-effective alternatives, including natural gas backup. On March 11th of this year, we returned. At that time, when we returned with an item, we were also coming back with a proposal from the Community Association to use a standalone generator for their building only. As a result, Site Logic presented the city-only solar and dual fuel backup scenario. You requested schematics. You had a variety of questions, and including what were the bottom line costs for the next meeting, which we returned on March 25th. We followed up with a report answering those questions. We provided the specs and the updated costs. There was some discussion among you, and there was also a concern about rising costs that the Community Association was enduring right now, and how could we potentially help them. So you deferred the decision, and you requested that Site Logic return with a whole campus dual fuel generator cost estimates. And so that is what we are here tonight. We are here tonight in response to that March 25th direction. The implementation budget summary, and all this is in your staff packet, changes that affect the cost budget, as you'll see, and Josh and Jonathan can speak more specifically to. There is an additional implementation budget to replace 1,500 square feet of existing tile roof with shingles, and that is to ensure that, and Jonathan can get into this in a little more detail, but to ensure the stabilization in installing panels to the roof of the garage at the RHCA. The pricing was also updated to reflect the potential of a June 1st notice to proceed. And then clearly there was some additional cost budget just going from a single use here for the city hall building only to the entire campus. The matrix, which is in your packet and will also be in the slides that Josh and Jonathan present, will show now that what was originally option B is now called B1. And you'll see that increased by $27,000, which is almost entirely driven by the roofing aspects I just discussed. And then the creation of option B2, and that's really what we're here to discuss tonight, which provides the emergency generation for the entire campus, City Hall, and the RHCA building. A preliminary proposed project schedule would look like this slide. So assuming that there is forward movement tonight, this would then go to the RHCA Board of Directors at their first meeting in May, which I believe is May 2nd. Assuming that everything goes swimmingly there, we would then issue a notice to a public hearing notice on the following day, which would probably go into publication the next Monday. And that is a 15-day notice period. So at that point, we would bring back a public hearing at the end of May, which would need to be a special meeting because our second meeting of the month is canceled due to Memorial Day. Beyond that, though, assuming that the council did approve at a public hearing to move forward with the project, then it would look like this, going from June 1st through December 31st, and the milestones are listed there as you see. This one-time investment cost, this is just a recap for you, with staff recommending the option B2, which is the whole campus solar backup. The total implementation one-time cost is $478,000. The budgeted capital that you have already set aside is $250,000. The Inflation Reduction Act funding that the city is eligible for is $119,600. So the remaining capital investment that the city would need to allocate towards the project would be $108,400. I've mentioned this in the staff report and the recent staff reports, which are also in your packet, just to make sure that you had all the information from December going forward. But the implementation of a solar photovoltaic system would have immediate and long-term impacts on utility cost avoidance for the city and the campus. SiteLogic, in their pro forma, estimated a 5% annual rate increase in utility cost avoidance projections. In 2023, the rate increase was actually 7.2%. In 2024, the forecasted rate was 7.6%. Edison has requested a rate increase for 2025 through 2028, with it going up 23% if the CPUC approves what they have asked for, and unfortunately they typically do, over 2024. In 2026 through 2028, you'll see, I don't know what the percentages are, but you'll see, the hundreds of millions of dollars that they are respectively asking for in rate increases in those out years as well. So I just did a little bit of math, and one thing I don't have on here is something that I asked Robert, but I had the slide deck prepared before he got it to me. I wanted to know what was our fiscal year 22-23 costs for electricity, and that was $17,222. Our projected costs this year for electricity are $20,969. And that is just an average amount based on July through February costs at this point. And then I just projected out here based on SiteLogic, the proposed amount for 2024, and then this idea of what a 23% increase would look like. So you'll see a 5% increase would bring that up to 22,000 and change. An FY 24-25 projected cost at 7.6% would be 22.5, and then projected at a 23% increase would be 25,792. So option B2 project, the fiscal impact is to the city a one-time cost of $358,400. The unfunded portion of the potential project at this time, to reiterate, is $108,400. And again, with the potential for ongoing general fund utility savings. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Josh and, yeah, oh yeah, go ahead, Dr. Black.
How come we don't have a dual fuel whole campus bid?
We do. That is option B2.
No.
No, there's not. Option C, I was saying.
Option C is whole campus, I thought.
That's whole campus, that's not,
No.
that's whole campus. That's much better. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. How's everyone doing today?
Yeah.
This evening, what did I say? Oh, today? As long as I didn't say morning, I apologize. Is this on? Yeah, just use the arrow key. There you go. Perfect. Christian, appreciate all that. Thank you so much. Council, looking forward to kind of showing you the breakdown matrix of those three options. Even though we did include option A, what originally was here back towards the beginning of the year, taken all your feedback and again put together an option B1, option B2, and then option C, which is the entire campus as the generator. We'll look at what the preliminary site plan for option B2 and B1, correct?
It's very similar, all of them are permutations of.
And dive a little deeper into what those next steps would be. I click here. There you go. There's a little
You've seen this has been in your packet, and it breaks down the really 4 scenarios in option B2. And then the correction for option C is actually whole campus and not just City Hall for a dual fuel emergency generator only option. Here's a preliminary site plan. Again, if it's options B1 or B2, there's solar located on the back half of the building in the back. There will be trenching. 2 trench lines, one from the natural gas meter at the City Hall, as well as the power coming off of the solar. And then it all goes to the electrical shed, or old generator shed where the electrical meter is located. On the outside of that, we'll have, we're proposing the generator and propane tanks to be located outside of the shed.
But I guess before we get in the next steps, kind of wanted to leave up for questions regarding the matrix. Go ahead.
So my only question is, so the last column C is for a generator that is connected to both buildings, cutoffs, all the switch, everything we need with no solar. So this is a complete everything for the 146.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
With the caveat, just to remind you from previous meetings, that would need to go through a traditional bid process, which Site Logic could be a bidder, but it would not be through this, turnkey solution as originally presented for the solar and the backup.
And we
generator.
understand if it gets separated, that becomes its own thing.
Right.
And then in California, do we bury the propane tanks?
No, we do not. So these would be mounted outside. They're vertical tanks, potentially as many as 3. They'll need some separation from the generator. We think our preliminary layout could have them all on the same side of the existing generator shed.
And then how large is each one? How many gallons, or how many?
120 gallons apiece, so there'll be 3.
360.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, around 350, 360.
Yes.
And then how long would that be able to run? Because that's only, because that's only basically just 500 gallons.
Yeah, you're right. So we estimate, again, we looked at your load profile, that'll run 5 days.
Okay.
Depends on how you load the space, what additional load you may bring in, depending on the situation, but based on your current loading, 5 days.
Okay.
And then you're always connected to natural gas, so if that's not interrupted, then you'll always have pipeline gas.
So it's always natural gas first, then when that gets cut off, we switch to propane.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense.
Explode in a fire?
So they're self-contained. Obviously, it depends on how hot it gets, but the idea is that they're pressure vessels themselves.
Yes.
And so, I mean,
But usually on.
Everything burns.
Okay, but
That's what I heard, that the Maui thing, a lot of it is people's backyard.
on new ones, though, a lot of times they have a plastic valve that when that part melts off, and then you'll see on a propane tank that's sitting in the middle of a fire, it literally will still be there because it's super cold on the inside, so it's not melting the metal, it melts off the little plastic thing, and then and that comes on fire.
So you don't have it explode.
So it doesn't explode on new ones. I don't know what old ones do. I don't know if you, whatever, because if you leave like the ones from your barbecue, they don't have anything like that. And you leave it underneath and that thing catches on fire, you got a bomb. So at least ones you don't buy in the state. I don't know what happened. Maybe the state could be different. But that's usually what they do. They have a safety valve on them. And usually you bury them.
No. Not a gas tank.
I'm just telling you, that's what we do elsewhere. And when I'm in America, we bury them. Here, can't tell you what happens. Okay.
Any other questions
No.
before they go on?
No, sorry.
Ricks?
Perfect. So next steps, if council sees one of these options as a fit, we would like to then go and get buy-in through the Rolling Hills Association. From there, we really don't know, but I'm gonna just kind of piggyback then off you, Christian. I wrote those dates down. Around around Friday, March 3rd, or May 3rd. I'm screwing my months up. Or towards the beginning of that following week, the city would then do a formal public posting, which is compliant with the government code, on a future public hearing. We would then come back, I didn't get it down, but it's somewhere around May 25th, 26th. Well, you said special.
It would be between May 21st and May 31st by my calculations.
Okay. The public hearing with the government code cannot be a special hearing. It will be a regular board meeting or a regular council meeting. I'll go back to that process guide I sent you. So beginning of June then would be the public hearing.
Then if it's got to be a regular meeting, then that's not going to be the beginning of June. That'll be the second Monday in June.
Okay.
So, and I'm sorry, so we're really, really tight, if I'm understanding this, we're really, really tight. I mean, if one thing of this doesn't go right, we may not be able to make all of our deadlines and get the project completed in time. Is that correct?
I'll let you speak on that for
I
the
mean,
development side.
there's no deadline per se. We put together a schedule based on a June 1st notice to proceed. If that pushes out, so does the end time.
Okay. One of the reasons I'm asking is if this is going to have to go before the community association, and I noticed that the generator, they had made a choice of what kind of generator and size that they wanted and everything. And I noticed that this is a different type that we're recommending. Can you give us a little more information about, or maybe you want to wait until you meet with them?
I can't speak to what they're specifically looking at in their project.
Okay.
The one that we put forward is a 48 kW system. It's sized to handle the load in both buildings entirely. My understanding is the system that they put in or were recommending or suggesting or someone recommended to them was a much smaller generator
Right.
that wasn't able to keep up the whole building.
Right. No, I just meant the brand, and so.
I believe they're using a Generac.
Was, yeah.
We looked at both a Generac and a Kohler. Based on the performance criterias, we're recommending a Kohler.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay,
Ready.
no, public comment? Sorry, Jim. Any public comment on this? And we'll have two, and if we can make it, please?
Alfred Visco, 15 Century. Well, now I'm totally confused. So when you look at option B2, and you back out the $299,000 for the solar PV system from the $478,000, the dual fuel emergency generator under option B2 is priced at $179,000.
And Fred, I'm with you on this. I think he is either because this is the same number we had before, the 146,000, which was just for City Hall, and the generator got bigger. So if you look at the delta between B1 and B2, it magically is $33,000. You add the 33 to 146, you get the 179,000, which is the generators that's big enough to do both. So it needs a C1, C2, because it's really 179,000 for the project that we're probably talking
Well,
about.
okay, so this option C is not for the whole campus?
That's just for this building.
That's what I thought, okay. So that's just for this building.
I
Just-
mean, I think that's fine. We like to double check.
Hang on, just hang tight. If
This
if you have
confused,
questions,
this
we'll ask you.
confused everybody when all of a sudden option C became for the whole campus. Okay, so so option C for 146,000 was the old one, which was 48 kW and a 300-gallon propane. That was what was on the old previous March 6 sheet. And that was 300-gallon 48. They're now proposing 360 gallons for the propane. But what I don't understand is, what size KW are you proposing for the whole campus? It can't be 48, because that supposedly was for one building. So there's something not adding up in my pea brain here. My pea brain tells me that if 48 is just for one building, KW, and that cost 146,000, and for both buildings it cost 179,000, you gotta be talking a bigger KW than 48. So that's where I was confused about this whole process. Okay, there's my confusion, all right? I sat through the Rolling Hills Community Association debate ad nauseum over what they were gonna put in, which was a 26 kWh, forgot how much the propane tank was, for $38,495, and that was a Generac. They are not going to be happy with something other than a Generac. And Kristen can speak to that if she wishes. My impression is they love Generac, they love the dealer that they're doing, they got a really good price, and they want to go ahead with the 26 kW. And they've been holding up, waiting for you folks to make a decision. Here's my suggestion. Let them go ahead and do their 26 kWh Generac for $38,495. And then let's size our backup, 26 minus, whatever, it's 48 minus 26 or bigger than that, I don't know. Okay, I suspect it's bigger than 48. Let's assume it's 26. They put a 26 Generac in, we put a 26 Kohler in, and let the best man win. Let's see which one works better. That's where I would suggest we go. As far as the solar panels, I mentioned it before. When it was $272,000 for 27 kilowatts, and now it's $299,000 for 27 kilowatts. That's way too much money for a 27 kilowatt plant. You should be probably half that, even given the government padding. So my suggestion is go out for bids for, let association do what they want to do. Go out for bids for one that's sized, a backup generator that's sized for us, whatever that size is. See what it looks like, and then thank these guys very much for their solar panel work and pay them whatever we owe them. And if we decide to do with a solar panel, we can go out for bids on the solar panel.
Thank you.
That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hello, Cameron Johngard, 13 Wide Loop. I'm gonna head out right after this comment. Have we explored battery backups? One. Okay, I figured.
welcome to
I
our
wanted to
world.
make you guys smile at the end of the day, all right? That was a part of my joke. And then the second one was the trench lines of the electrical lines go straight through the parking lot. I know, obviously the closest point between 2 points is a straight line. But is there any way to change the direction of the trench line so you're not tearing through the parking lot? Go through the northern, sorry, it's okay. You could be allergic, it's okay. On the north side of the lot along the landscaping to be trenching instead of going on a diagonal path, and cutting through all the driveway. I'm sure you guys already discussed that too, but I'm new, so that was my question.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
The cost to trench through, obviously landscaping is significantly less than through the parking lot.
Staff had the same question. So.
Good question.
Is that something that,
Yes. The answer makes total sense.
is that something that we want to ask the,
Yeah, let's.
It has to get from there to here.
Yeah.
Then it goes across, then it goes across some asphalt. It's gotta go
You good?
across some
You're good.
asphalt.
If you're done with that.
No, it was a question.
We would have to bring the
Come
consultant.
up, yeah.
So
I
don't
gotta
leave
move.
yet.
You want me to move?
Yeah, don't leave, don't leave. Not yet, leave it to get your response.
Okay, I'll stay here, sorry. No problem, use the choice. You're up.
First one, we started exploring batteries back a year ago, so that answered that. Two, I'll let Jonathan define a little more, but I think there was a couple options on the means of how it would be done. It could be tearing up the parking lot or simply just boring it. I'll let you
Yeah,
kind of
that's
explain
correct.
a
There's some
little more.
existing utilities we have to be mindful. There's a electrical line for the lighting that we have to dodge and avoid. The bottom line is through final engineering, we'll identify a path that makes sense for the city as well as for us. And that may be straight across the driveway along the north side, or as shown, kind of as a diagram, diagonally across.
does that?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, any other comment? Okay, Kristen.
Sorry. Just going great.
We're on.
All right. Thank you very much. Do I need to say my name? So, Kristen Regg, I'm the manager of the Rolling Hills Community Association. On behalf of the association, we appreciate the council's consideration of this project and the option to include the association's building as part of the scope. For the generator coverage, it's a really important project, and it's so important to have the power, to both the buildings. We're going to be a hub when there's an emergency, and important that the proximity is here where we can communicate in real time instead of being far apart or not having power here on the campus at all and being far away from the gates and the real emergency. So we do see this as a very urgent matter. But also if the city were to do the power option that covers both of the buildings, it also frees up association resources to use elsewhere within the community. So we do appreciate that as well. So as far as the brand, our original bids that we actually brought to the council last year were for Kohlers. So the real option that the board was pushing for was to have a natural gas. So, whatever does the job most efficiently. I think, I can't speak on behalf of the board, but my feeling is that they will be fine, so.
Thank you.
No, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So would you prefer that the city did both buildings, or would you prefer you do your own and we do our own?
Again, I can't really speak on behalf of the board, but again, it frees up money for
Right.
us to use on sinkholes and security
And if we're a
and
little
things
bit
that the
slower than
city.
you guys are,
Well, I
you
mean,
know? But
it depends
won't
on
be years, it won't
right.
be years, it'll
If
be
it's not,
months.
if we're talking about December 31st, I think everybody can live with that.
Okay.
And the guard shack already has a generator, right?
All the guard shacks have generators.
Okay, thank you.
So, and that point that Kristen brought up, just for some clarification, was one of the reasons, because they were gonna go ahead on their own. But as other financial expense pressures have come up, this was a way that they could do that. So that's why it came back again.
And the original, the only reason, you know, the whole concept is that the city provides the power for the campus. And so the only reason the association was doing something separate was because a generator wasn't in the plan. So, and we felt that was critical.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen.
Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close public comment. What are the wishes of the council?
I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to have a discussion, because it wasn't a question, so I just really think that there hasn't been much discussion tonight anyway about the solar benefits. I mean, we talked about, in Christian's presentation, talked about all the monies we're spending in energy and that we're going to be spending because they're going to keep increasing the rate. So as far as I can see, the solar is the only one that's going to provide that. Just having generators, that's not going to move the needle on that. We still have to pay for the energy costs. So I think that the fact that we have some federal dollars that are going to give us some money, it's just sort of the same kind of issue we talked about with the other item, that we're going to get some money, and then we don't have to put as much money down to be able to get something that's going to have the longevity of providing us with a clean source of power. And the state is, we talked about this in prior meetings, but the state is not giving up on wanting to make everybody go solar. So then if we end up having to do that later down the line, when we miss this opportunity, that would not be a good thing. So I think it is something to behoove us to really think seriously of that, and to be able to get into solar and having the generators also as backup, that's the best option for all the reasons we've discussed in previous meetings. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I think it's important, given the costs we're spending already for electricity and that we're going to be spending. So this is the gift that keeps on giving, you know, for us to be saving costs that we could be spending elsewhere as well.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve option C, and we also need to specify that it's a whole campus dual fuel emergency generator.
Can I just make one thing ahead of that is, I think this number's wrong, so we cannot approve it for the $170. I think.
Can we do a not to exceed number?
Sure, if you said 180.
Okay, I would approve it for a not to exceed 180,000, or I'd make the motion that we could go for option C, whole campus dual fuel emergency generator, go out to bid not to exceed 180,000.
And so, Councilmember Black, if I may, so I mean, we would have to, bid it.
Right.
So we understand what you guys may or may not, but we can't.
It has to go to bid.
Right, it has to go to bid, and so I want to be sure our bid documents won't say you cannot come in above this. We'll just bid it, and then we'll bring it to you all, and you guys can
Because
decide.
we think there might be an error in the math today, possibly.
Yep, got it.
Might not, that'd be great if it wasn't. 146, make me happy.
And could I just, before we do, just one more question. We have to bid that because it's different than if we did the
Correct, yeah, there's,
the combined.
right.
We wouldn't have to bid. We could continue with,
Correct, we can continue with the design build.
I just wanted to make sure.
And they've worked really hard. I give them a lot of credit.
They've been great. They've been great. Okay, so you have a motion. Have a second?
I'll second it. Vote, see how it goes.
Can we take a roll call vote on this, please?
Okay. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Black?
Yes.
Councilmember Derringer?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Piper?
Yes.
And Mayor Mersch.
Yes.
Hey, my only request is when we go out to bid, we look at Kohler and Generac, because the 48s come in both flavors.
And they've worked really hard. So
Well, I get it, they're trying. It's just too much, we're broke.
Okay.
Right?
We appreciate everything.
Sorry, guys.
You've paid everything you've done. I hope you'll bid on our project.
I think we get it, actually.
Thank you. Huh?
I hope they get it.
Okay, next item is.
14A.
14A, I'm actually going to ask, meeting's gone on quite a bit tonight. I'd like to actually see if we can postpone this to a future council.
Which one are we talking about?
14A, the support of, the consideration of support for the, trying to do something about our Prop 14 problems.
Do you think it's gonna take that long?
Yes, it probably will. So I would second that motion, because I have to stay up all night to get.
Okay, so we'll carry that. Moving on to item 15A, receive and file the fire fuel abatement and code enforcement quarterly report.
Mayor, members of City Council. The quarterly fire fuel report for January 1st through March 31st is before you. Just a report for the actions on the code enforcement cases. We did include in the first quarter report for 10 cases were closed during that period. Attachment 3. 14 cases were opened during that period, including 7 involving vegetation or dead trees under attachment 2. And code enforcement is currently working on 15 open cases, 4 of which are dealing with dead trees or vegetation in attachment 1. We referred 3 code enforcement cases to the city attorney's office, which is also listed in attachment 1. And just to let you know, we did have a meeting with the fire fuel committee, or actually agencies dealing with fire fuel, and that was on April 4th, earlier this month, and that was with representatives from the Palos Verdes Municipal Land Conservancy, Southern California Edison, and Rolling Hills Community Association. Palos Verdes Land Conservancy reported that they are still continuing to mow and remove acacia in their areas. They are looking for additional funding sources. They bought a new mower, but they also need additional funding in order to be able to staff some of the mowing. And they are willing to provide the city tours at the in the past, and they're also willing to make any presentations to council if you'd like to hear more from them. SCE reported that their crews are currently doing their maintenance. They do those twice a year. They are looking to restart their inspections in May or June this year, and they look to clear vegetation near power lines and equipment. And they trim vegetation that's within 12 feet of their power lines and equipment. RHEA is looking also to do weed abatement. They've been busy due to the recent rains and other issues that they're dealing with. And the weights and measures were not at the meeting, but they reported afterwards they are clearing vegetation on the property on Roadrunner Road, and their responsibilities are to oversee that vegetation on vacant properties. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Yeah, I do too, so go ahead.
So John, on the first page, the second item, there's an address of 28983. Is that, I thought the PV Drive residences were 4 digits.
That's what we had on, that was actually submitted electronically, so that should be the correct address. The resident over there was complaining that there was water draining onto their property. And I had contacted RHEA because they had recently put a privacy or a fence in that area to prevent people from coming onto Rolling Hills.
Does that cause water to drain on something?
Not necessarily. I asked them to look into the issue. I haven't heard back, and I know Catherine's on vacation this whole week. But they're being able to install that wall or fence may have caused, change in drainage patterns, and that's why we asked them to take a look at it.
All right, well, I recommend you look at that address, because I don't think that's a good address for this area. Is that a residence address?
Yes.
Any other, did someone else have a question? Nope. Okay. I have a question, and Mr. Visco talked about this earlier. I was under the understanding, apparently I was incorrect, that on the code enforcement for dead vegetation. We had a trial project where we were doing it proactively, and we had a full-time code enforcement officer for it. That went away, we didn't have the funds to keep doing that, so I understood that we were just doing it by complaint driven, as with all of our other code enforcement things. But I found out that we are proactively continuing to do dead vegetation, which isn't a problem. I'm not the one out there doing it, so the fact that I didn't know that is not a terrible thing, but it was getting done. But I want to make sure that there seemed to be some inconsistency. I want to are we or are we not doing proactive code enforcement on dead vegetation?
Yes, we are doing proactive code enforcement on dead vegetation. The issue is that we only have one code enforcement officer here. He's only here twice a week, 6 days a week, and so his time is limited. And he has other responsibilities as well, reacting to complaints on, building code violations
Right,
and other.
I understand. So are we getting, so that then dovetails into the next question, is that if we are saying, I don't want to say we're being proactive, but we can't do it. We're either, it's complaint, or if we're going to be proactive, we need to make sure that that's being funded. And so that is, when you guys go to talk about budgets at the budget subcommittee, if the amount of money we're currently spending to do the quote-unquote code enforcement, if we're not able to keep up with doing proactive on dead vegetation, that needs to be considered so that more money can be out, in my opinion. We need to discuss whether or not that's what we want to continue to do, because we'll have to allocate more money for it. That's all.
Can I ask? You done?
Guess I'm done.
So my question is, if we're proactively doing this, which means we're driving around the city looking and whatever, has anyone, right below Poppy Trail on Portuguese Bend, there's a giant dead pine tree? It's been there for months. If our proactive guy hasn't spotted next to the road a giant dead pine tree, we might want to discuss whether our proactive approach is proactive before we fund more money to someone who's missing a giant dead pine tree. It is massive.
I just assumed it was on easement, the association was gonna
I
take
don't
care
know.
of it.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's not a big deal to chop it down.
Poppy?
Below that, if you,
On Portuguese Bend.
yeah, it's on Portuguese Bend, right below Poppy Trail.
North of Poppy Trail.
You'll see it on the way down the hill. When you're driving down the next time, look out your window. It'll be the first tree you see that is 80, 100 feet tall that's dead.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Mr. Visco? Other than to repeat what I just said.
Okay, so we've come full circle. We're now proactive. What does that mean? Do we go around once a month? Do we go around once every 2 months? Do we go around once every 3 months? Do we go every other week? Do we do certain sections? What does proactive mean? I don't understand.
And I think we need to understand that we need to develop standards and be able to fund. I can't develop standards until I know
Okay.
what our costs are going to be and so forth, so.
What are we doing now, though, proactively? Once a week, once a month, once a year?
John, how often did you
Twice a
say
week.
was
Our
here?
code enforcement officer is here twice a week. We did open up 7 cases during this quarter on dead vegetation. And, I mean, he is going around, but he has other responsibilities.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I mean, it's the winter months, we're coming out of that, we're into spring now, and so we're
understand.
starting to get the leaves back on the trees.
yeah, I
But some of them may look dead, but they're actually just dormant.
I
Give it
understand.
time, they'll grow back.
We're supposed to be, by June 1st, we're supposed to have all our dead vegetation done. So he's here twice a week, but he's here doing other things than going out proactively
He's-
looking
yes,
at property.
he's
Okay.
doing both.
And I agree with you about that pine tree. I've seen that thing. I haven't brought it up. I just wanted to see how long it was going to stay there, before somebody actually did something on it. Yeah, it's been there for a year probably, at least.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, hearing none, I'll close that. Items, anything else? Okay, I would like to adjourn.
It was a receive.
We have to receive.
We need a
all
motion
Yeah.
to receive and file.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So
Make a
moved.
motion to receive and file.
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I apologize for everybody's time. I would like to adjourn our meeting tonight in the memory of Deputy Daniel Okamoto, who was killed in an off-duty motorcycle accident for he's sheriff's deputy. The Deputy Okamoto was deputy at Lomita Station since he joined the Sheriff's Department in 2017. Prior to joining the Sheriff's Department, he had been active in their Explorer, which is their youth, people who want to go into it. He was also the son of LA Sheriff Deputy. He was the core deputy, like we have Deputy Lopez here. He was the core deputy for Rolling Hills Estates, and he was very committed to serving the communities that we serve here, and he was a leader at the station. He was a former training officer and a South Patrol Division All-Star Award winner and a member of the community outreach team. So he was very well. He really cared about the community. So I'd like to adjourn in his memory. Thank you very much.